The scene starts with Rosa questioning the person in front of her, asking if he truly loved her. After a brief pause, the person asked why she was even bringing that up, to which Rosa repeated her question, demanding to know whether he loved her or not. As she screamed out, her voice trembling with desperation, she stated that she needed to know since he wasn't replying. She begged him to answer, repeatedly asking if he loved her. As her vision began to blur, she wondered who the person in front of her was. When Rosa suddenly woke up from her dream, she found herself dressed quite frank, staring blankly at the ceiling of a luxurious hotel room. She muttered in confusion, wondering what that strange dream had been about. But before she could gather her thoughts, she froze in shock upon noticing someone sleeping right beside her. The man beside her suddenly woke up, startled, saying she had scared him and questioning what was wrong with her. On the nearby sofa, a young woman yawned and asked what was going on. Rosa, completely surprised, demanded to know who they were and how they had entered her room. The man beside her looked confused, asking if she was joking since they had partied together last night on the hotel rooftop. He reminded her that she had told them it was fine to come and hang out with her, saying that several others were still passed out outside. Rosa rubbed her forehead and asked if that was really the case, realizing she must have been so drunk that she didn't remember anything. The man sighed, remarking that she was colder than the rumors said. The girl beside him asked if Rosa at least remembered her name. After a short pause, Rosa nodded, calling her Kathy, making the man chuckle, who stated that Rosa's guess wasn't even close, only for the girl to correct her with irritation, saying her name was Geneva. Later, at the beach, the sound of laughter filled the air as people played and splashed in the water. Rosa, sitting under a parasol, stared at her phone blankly while Geneva lay beside her, reminding her that she had mentioned she was only here for vacation during her break and would head back in a month or two. Another girl joined in, teasing that Rosa should make the most of the hotel's amenities in the meantime, especially the hair oil. One of the boys walking past sneered that no hair oil would fix her straw-like hair, just to annoy her. The girl glared at him, calling him a bald jerk and ordering him to go swim or do something else. Rosa, meanwhile, glanced at her ringing phone and saw the caller ID of Seo Ye Eon. She hesitated, then answered. Jaeon's voice came through, saying it had been a month and asking if this was the kind of attitude he deserved. He said he had seen her Instagram, where she claimed to be busy, yet she seemed to be running around everywhere. He sarcastically remarked what a perfect daughter she was. Rosa frowned and asked why he had called. Jaeon ignored her irritation and asked when she was coming back to Korea. Rosa replied that she would probably return right before the semester started, asking what his reason was for calling. He told her there was a lot going on and something fun happening back home. When she asked what he meant, he laughed awkwardly, saying it was difficult to explain and that if she wanted to know, she should come back to Korea to see for herself. His vague answer left her confused. Geneva, who had been listening, remarked teasingly that the voice on the phone sounded like a man's, asking if he was Rosa's father. Rosa quietly replied that she didn't have a father. Geneva then asked if he was her Korean boyfriend, but Rosa denied it, saying he was just a college friend calling her out of nowhere, talking nonsense. After hanging up, she began to wonder if something might have happened to her mother. She opened her browser and searched for Flora Hotel. Flora is a luxury global hotel chain with over 30 locations worldwide, recently opening a new branch in Miami, featuring a rooftop bar, fine dining restaurant, and VIP exclusive casino. Lee Rosa, the 22-year-old daughter of Chairman Lee Suryan, had been promoting the hotel through her social media, boosting its sales. Rosa sighed, realizing that there is no scandal or anything. She dropped her phone onto the beach chair and stared up at the blue sky, thinking that there might indeed be something exciting going on in Korea. Despite being just a college student, she knew attention was already on her as one of the suitable heirs to her family's business. When she finally landed in Korea, her driver greeted her at the airport, saying she had returned earlier than usual since she typically stayed abroad for the entire 2-month break. Rosa simply said she had felt a little tired and wanted to come back. She added that, with the Lunar New Year approaching, she thought she would surprise her mother as well. Then, after a moment, she asked how her mother was doing, explaining that she hadn't told her she was coming so the surprise would be genuine. Her words made the driver flinch slightly. The driver smiled stiffly and replied that the madam was doing well. His awkward tone didn't escape Rosa's notice, and she wondered why he sounded that way. Still, she brushed it off, thinking it wasn't her concern anymore. As the car arrived at the grand estate, its glamorous and dazzling exterior gleamed under the daylight. The house looked calm and flawless, with no shadows lurking behind its bright walls, or so it seemed. Stepping out of the car, Rosa stretched and sighed, saying she was exhausted. She called out for the butler, asking him to bring her luggage up to her room. When no one responded, she assumed he must have gone shopping and decided to leave her bags near the stairs for him to carry later. But as she turned to enter, she stumbled upon a pair of men's shoes by the entrance. They weren't familiar to her, and her heart suddenly sank. A sense of unease washed over her as she wondered whose shoes those were. Moving quietly up the stairs, she could hear faint sounds coming from her mother's bedroom. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the door. She stopped in front of it, whispering to herself for just a warning, anything, before she saw what was inside. Gathering her courage, she peeked through the narrow gap of the slightly open door. Her eyes widened, and her body froze. A man was on the bed, kissing her mother passionately. The sight struck her like a thunderbolt. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She stood motionless, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Out of everything she had been through, nothing had shocked her more than walking in on her mother having fun with a stranger. Her mother suddenly turned her head, gasping in horror when she saw Rosa standing there. She stammered, asking how Rosa had come home so early. The man, half naked, looked back at Rosa in stunned silence, his expression of confusion. Rosa's heart pounded painfully as she stared at them both, her thoughts clouded in disbelief. At that moment, the smooth glass surface of her once perfect 22-year-old life began to crack. Afterwards, Rosa asked if she needed to talk with that man outside, to which her mother calmly affirmed. Rosa questioned why she was suddenly behaving like this. Until now, her mother had always kept every man she met far from Rosa's sight. Her mother sighed softly, saying those men had never really been dates. She had simply used them for her own convenience. After all, she was Lee Suryeon, the chairwoman of the Flora group. But this time, she said, Yeonwoo was different from all the others. Rosa raised a brow at the word different, asking sarcastically if it was because he had some tattoo on his back. Her mother's eyes widened slightly, surprised that Rosa had already seen it. She laughed awkwardly, saying kids these days all get tattoos. Rosa replied sharply that maybe kids did, but questioned why her mother was dating someone like that, especially one with such a ridiculous taste in design. She asked if her mother even knew what he did for a living or how old he was. Her mother replied almost casually that he was 24. Rosa froze in disbelief. She herself was only 22. Her heart dropped as she questioned whether her mother was truly this desperate. Before she could say more, Suryeon called out to her, saying that her mother had lived nearly 20 years without a partner, and that it must have been lonely. Rosa thought inwardly that her mother wasn't even 50 yet, finding it hard to believe this was happening. Suryeon went on to say he was the one who had filled that emptiness in her mother's life. He claimed to be kind-hearted, and said that if they lived together, he could help heal the emptiness she had felt while raising Rosa alone without a father. Rosa interrupted sharply, asking why he was even bringing that word up. Suryeon smiled gently, saying her mother had already told her that he would be living with them from now on. The words left Rosa shocked and speechless. Later, as she stood staring at a family photo on the table, Yeonwoo entered the room, greeting her politely and asking if her talk with her mother had gone well. Rosa turned toward him with a disgusted expression and silently walked out. Yeonwoo tried to stop her, saying he had heard a lot about her from Suryeon and hadn't expected they would meet so soon. As she began to climb the stairs, she called after him, saying she knew her mother had told her to get along with him. But she didn't feel like it. Once the semester started, she would be busy anyway. Until then, she would think of him only as a live-in worker and ordered him not to talk to her. Without waiting for his reaction, she walked upstairs. Suryeon, standing nearby, chuckled and told Yeonwoo not to worry, saying Rosa was just acting cold for now and would warm up eventually. Yeonwoo simply smiled faintly, saying he wasn't worried since she was her mother's daughter. He then stepped closer towards Suryeon. Later that evening, the scene shifted to a quiet bar where Yeon was sitting with a carefree mood. Rosa asked if this was what he had meant earlier. Jeon, confused, asked what she was talking about. Rosa slammed him, saying her mother had hooked up with a younger guy while she was gone. Jeon nearly choked on his drink, asking if she meant Chairwoman Lee. When she nodded, he asked about the man, for which Rosa said Jeon had mentioned that she had business in Korea and even called her before. Jeon smirked and admitted that the call had just been a prank. He had been bored and wanted to mess with her. Rosa stared at him in disbelief, thinking he had lost his mind, but Jeon waved his hand dismissively, saying that wasn't the issue now. He told her to sit down and tell him everything properly. Though irritated, Rosa knew Jeon was the only person she could confide in. She sighed and told him that the man was 24. Jeon was quite surprised, saying that was practically half her mother's age, adding jokingly that her mother deserved respect for living life to the fullest. Rosa glared at him and asked what had even happened while she was away, wondering if he had heard anything. Jeon shrugged, saying it was her house, so why would he know more than her? Still, he admitted that the whole thing didn't sound like a wholesome relationship and asked what the man's name was. Rosa answered that his name was Yeonwoo. Jeon said he had never heard of him and asked what he looked like. Rosa paused, recalling his face. She remembered how he had a certain air of sorrow around him, something unsettling and strangely captivating. He was striking at first sight, but the way his eyes carried that shadowed gloom made her think he had been through far too much. She told Jeon that he just looked older than his age. As Jeon walked her out of the bar later, he asked what she planned to do now. Rosa replied quietly that she didn't know yet. As they walked past a nearby hallway, they overheard a man talking. One asked if there were any guys available at the moment, explaining that a group of Japanese executives had just arrived. The receptionist asked whether they wanted girls or guys, and the reply came that they were looking for good-looking men. One of them then asked where Yeonwoo was. The receptionist hesitated before replying, but the customer cursed, saying that Yeonwoo had quit. He added that Yeonwoo would have been perfect for the job. The receptionist nervously said she would call in whoever could come quickly. The man asked if it was true that Yanwu had left with some rich lady, to which the other nodded, saying that rumor had been going around among the staff, that Yanwu was the type with affection issues who made older women go wild. John chuckled at the comment, shaking his head as he laughed crudely. Rosa, standing nearby, heard everything. Her expression darkened, her aura turning cold and sharp. John, trying to lighten the tension, joked that maybe they were confusing Yanwu with someone named Dokogo. But his attempt at humor didn't work. Later that night, Rosa returned home and entered her room, feeling strangely uncomfortable in her own house. She recalled Jaeon trying to cheer her up earlier, telling her not to overthink and saying that overthinking wasn't her style anyway, but she found his words easier said than done. Just then, a faint sound reached her ears, moans coming from the direction of the master bedroom. She froze, her face twisting in disbelief. As she stood on the veranda, she cursed inwardly, wondering how a house worth billions could have such thin walls. She thought bitterly that for 3 grand per pyong, she didn't even have the right not to hear her mother's noises. She turned toward her door, muttering that she should just go inside, since they probably wouldn't hear anything from there. But as she stood still, her gaze shifted toward the master bedroom again. Jaeon's earlier words replayed in her mind, the type that makes older women go wild. Her chest tightened as curiosity began to creep in despite herself. As Rosa approached the suite, she wondered if her mother had ever known what kind of man he really was before bringing him in. She thought that perhaps if her mother had seen the kind of intimacy they shared, she would have understood everything. As Rosa moved closer to the room, she froze in place, paralyzed by the sounds coming from inside. She slowly backed away and lay down on her bed, trying to convince herself that she only needed to sleep and clear her mind. She believed that if she ignored it, it would feel as though nothing had happened, as she was never the kind of person who liked being curious. Yet, the continuous noises coming from the other side of the wall made it impossible to rest. Lying there, she muttered to herself, wondering where her headphones were, while on the other side, Yeonwoo was with her mother. He whispered in a nervous tone, asking what if someone outside heard them, mentioning that Rosa might wake up. But Suryeon replied coldly, telling him not to stop and to ignore everything else, urging him to continue what he was doing. Yeonwoo's eyes landed on a framed photo of Suryeon and Rosa placed nearby. For a brief moment he paused, then nodded faintly, whispering to himself that he would continue. Afterwards, as breakfast was being served, a spoon accidentally fell under the table. When Rosa leaned down to pick it up, she froze again. Under the table, she saw Yeonwoo glancing at her. He quickly told her to stay seated and that he would pick it up instead. Rosa sat upright again, uneasy, wondering what she had just seen, feeling a strange discomfort. It had already been 2 weeks since she returned to Korea, and during that time, she had noticed how easily Yeonwoo had blended into their household. He seemed comfortable using the family's things as if they were his own. He was friendly with the staff, and of course, he treated her the same way. One day, as Rosa was about to leave for a jog, Yeonwoo asked where she was heading. Offering her a cup of warm water, he asked her to take it along since the weather was cold and advised her not to catch a cold. Rosa, taken aback by his tone, felt disgusted by the familiarity. Without saying a word, she turned away and ran toward her car. Sitting inside, she gritted her teeth in annoyance, thinking that she had already asked him not to talk to her, yet he kept acting close, as if he were her father or someone who had authority over her. She felt suffocated and thought that maybe it would be better to stay in a hotel instead. But as she imagined it, she could already hear the hotel staff gossiping, questioning why the chairwoman's daughter was staying there, what had happened at home, and if something was wrong. The mere thought of it exhausted her even more. Rosa sighed, feeling mentally drained. She thought that Yeonwoo was simply too much. She could not understand how her mother could bring in some strange man overnight, claim he was family, and let him live with them. After that, as Rosa was watching Yeonwoo walk past a table, he stumbled slightly. She thought that he might just be some random nobody who once worked serving drinks for a living, someone her age who had no place here. While she was lost in thought, Yeonwoo suddenly appeared using a rag to clean up. Rosa's irritation deepened as she watched him kneel down to wipe the floor. She felt that cleaning was precisely the kind of thing he should be doing, yet something about him made her uneasy. Her eyes unintentionally drifted toward him, and she found herself staring at his butt and then at his posture. Just then, the nanny called out to Yeonwoo from the hallway. Hearing her voice, Rosa quickly crouched down, hiding even after being on the first floor to avoid being seen. The nanny entered, asking if something had spilled and offering to handle the cleaning herself since it was her job. But Yeonwoo politely declined, saying he could clean it himself and that she shouldn't worry if she was busy. The nanny praised him for being so well-mannered, saying she was heading out for grocery shopping. Before leaving, she asked if there was anything he wanted for dinner. Yeonwoo hesitated for a moment, then replied that the menu should be decided by the family who lived there. The nanny smiled, telling him cheerfully that he lived there too and should feel free to make suggestions, reminding him that he sat with them at the table. Her words seemed to leave Yeonwoo quiet for a while as he nodded with an uncertain smile. Later that evening, Rosa sat in the bathtub, feeling completely drained. She thought about her connections with Yoo Junwon and how dealing with them constantly wore her out. She wished she could stop thinking altogether, that her mind would just go silent. After soaking for a while, she got up and stepped out, wrapping a towel around herself. But as she opened the door, she froze once more. Yeonwoo was standing in the hallway, holding one of her bras in his hand. The air between them turned heavy. Rosa's eyes locked on the item and then on him. Her face turned red as she stated that it was hers. Yeonwoo, startled, fumbled, dropping it immediately. His face flushed as he nervously tried to explain, stuttering that he thought no one was home and that he had assumed she went out. He added awkwardly that he knew how it looked, but he could explain everything. Before he could continue, he turned his face away, trying to avert his gaze, and told her to put on some clothes first. Rosa, however, stepped closer, glaring at him, her hand poking at his chest. She leaned slightly toward him, her expression unreadable. Yeonwoo, keeping his eyes shut tightly, tried to insist once more that it wasn't what she thought, that he wasn't doing anything inappropriate, but before he could finish, Rosa slapped him hard across the face. After Rosa's slap landed across Yeonwoo's face, it took him a few moments to gather himself, still trying to process what had just happened. He quickly apologized, explaining that it was all a misunderstanding, but Rosa cut him off sharply, saying she wasn't even angry, she simply wanted to hit him. She coldly asked if he planned to hit her back, or perhaps run to her mother and tell her that her daughter had slapped him after he saw her naked. Her voice carried a tone of defiance as she told him he couldn't do anything about it anyway. She warned that as long as he lived under the same roof as her, she would keep tormenting him, simply because his presence made her uncomfortable. Yeonwoo lowered his gaze, his expression filled with quiet despair. Seeing his face, Rosa remarked that being slapped and insulted by a girl 2 years younger should have been humiliating. If she were in his position, she said, she would have felt utterly worthless. Yet he stood there silently, neither speaking nor defending himself. She told him to listen carefully. She didn't need a stepfather. He could either leave on his own or be thrown out. The choice was his. With that, she turned to leave but suddenly froze as she felt Yeonwoo grab her leg. Startled, she looked down to see him kneeling, his hand clutching her ankle, pleading for her to listen. He begged her to believe that it was truly a misunderstanding. He explained that he had called out through the crack in the door but heard no response, so he assumed no one was there and stepped inside. Rosa watched him closely, her anger shifting into a strange curiosity. The way he knelt so easily didn't seem born of panic or desperation. It felt practiced, too casual, too natural, like someone who had knelt countless times before. Yeonwoo's voice trembled as he continued to plead. He admitted his fault, asking her not to tell the chairwoman, saying he would do anything in return. Tears welled up in his eyes as his hands shook. Rosa bent slightly, gripping his face with her hand, staring directly into his tearful eyes. For a moment she hesitated, then ordered him in a cold, firm tone to get out. Yeonwoo tried to say something more, his voice breaking, but she interrupted, repeating for him to leave her room. He bowed his head and apologized once again, before slowly backing away and stepping out. As Rosa exhaled deeply, she turned toward her shelf and noticed a pile of clothes fallen down. Realizing what they were, she sighed. It was the laundry. She recollected that maybe a few moments earlier, the nanny had asked Yeonwoo for help since she needed to finish some chores before leaving for the day. There had been a lot to carry, and Yeonwoo had agreed willingly, asking what needed to be done. The nanny had handed him a pile of clothes and told him to take the freshly folded clothes up to the young lady's room. He had called out for Rosa several times, but there had been no reply. Believing she wasn't home, he had entered quietly and placed the clothes on the table. However, when a few pieces fell to the floor, he bent down to pick them up, and that was when Rosa had suddenly stepped out of the bathroom, catching him in that awkward position. Now, standing alone in her room, Rosa clenched her jaw, telling herself she didn't care about the explanation. She had already given him enough warnings. He should have understood by now that he could never be part of her family. Still, she found herself thinking about the moment he had dropped to his knees so quickly, crying and begging for forgiveness. There was something about it that lingered in her mind. Glancing down at her hand, she noticed the red mark left from the slap. Her palm still stung faintly. She rubbed the area again and again, feeling a strange, unfamiliar sensation. It wasn't satisfaction, it was something else. She couldn't define it. The more she scratched at the mark, the more it itched until it started to bleed slightly. A strange shiver ran through her as she felt a wave of discomfort she couldn't explain. Later that day, Suryan arrived home and called both of them into the living room, asking what they had been doing while she was gone. Neither of them answered. Rosa avoided his gaze while Yeonwoo sat silently beside her, his expression unreadable. When she glanced at him briefly, she noticed there were no visible bruises on his face and concluded she must not have hit him very hard. Suryan questioned whether she was ignoring him. Rosa replied coldly, asking what she thought she could have possibly done with that man since they were only in their rooms. Her words immediately triggered her temper. Suryan snapped, demanding how she could still refer to Yeonwoo as that man and not by his name. She scolded her for her disrespect. Yeonwoo quickly stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. He assured Suryan that everything was fine and that she hadn't done anything wrong. But Suryan cut him off sharply, telling him to stay quiet. Taking a breath, Suryan said that perhaps the title didn't come naturally to Rosa yet, but she had to be more mindful. For her sake, she needed to address Yeonwoo properly, even if it felt uncomfortable. Rosa remained silent, glaring at Yeonwoo from the corner of her eye. She thought to herself how strange it was to see that smooth, calm face sitting beside her mother, as if nothing had ever happened. He looked completely composed, with no trace of humiliation. The thought unsettled her. She wondered what it would have been like if she had hit him harder. Suryan's attention then shifted to her hand. She noticed the red scratches and asked what had happened, questioning if she had hurt herself. Rosa glanced down at her palm and quickly replied that it had happened while she was washing her hands. But in her mind, she thought about the possibility of having left a mark on Yenwoo's face. When Suryan pressed further, asking what exactly she had been washing off to scrub her skin raw, Rosa coldly muttered that something dirty had gotten on it. Yenwoo, sitting across from her, stiffened at her words, his shoulders tensing as he lowered his head slightly. Suryan frowned but chose not to press the matter further. She simply told her to eat first and then get it treated afterward, to which Rosa nodded quietly. The meal continued in uneasy silence, with Suryan occasionally trying to start light conversation. Rosa gave short, disinterested replies, while Yenwoo forced a faint smile, trying to act as if everything was normal. Afterwards, Rosa wondered if she had ever tried deliberately breaking something she once desired. The thought made her smirk faintly, as she admitted to herself that doing so had felt thrilling, so thrilling that she regretted even being able to describe such a kind of fun. In the present, Rosa found herself at a pub surrounded by friends who were celebrating their last moments of freedom before the semester began. She hadn't planned to come, she had wanted to rest at home. But her mother had suggested that perhaps the three of them could have dinner together, or she could invite a friend to eat out. Wanting to escape from home, Rosa ended up joining her friends instead, figuring it was better than third-wheeling through her mother's dinner date. Compared to that, she thought, this noisy party was peace itself. Laughter and chatter filled the room as people drank and cheered. Someone shouted over the music, asking who the person in the red padded jacket was, as they looked familiar but unfamiliar at the same time. Rosa turned slightly at the sound of another voice, as a boy pointed across the table, exclaiming that it was Jaeon with a grin on his face, bumped lightly into his friend as he greeted him, saying it had been a long time since they last met. He commented on how the friend's hair had grown so much that he almost didn't recognize him. The other laughed and teased back, saying Jeon looked taller than before, as if he had grown while no one was watching. One of the girls nearby asked where Jeon should sit and whether they needed to shuffle around, but Jeon waved off the suggestion, saying there was an empty seat right there. He walked toward Rosa and playfully nudged her shoulder, teasing her about looking sleepy. Rosa just gave him a look, pretending not to react. As the group grew louder, Yeon took a bottle and jokingly opened it with a dramatic gesture, earning laughter from everyone around. He poured drinks with exaggerated affection, saying that he poured as much as he loved them all. Lifting his glass, he declared they should all live with love. Rosa watched quietly, her thoughts drifting. While Seo Yeon is the fourth son of Hui Myung Construction, they had known of each other through social gatherings as children but only became close after ending up in the same university department. Rosa remembered how Yeon had once teased her about reading an article on the Korea scandal, saying he hadn't realized they'd be in the same field. He had tried to guess her name back then, calling her Rose, and when she didn't respond, he'd tried again, Dandelion, then something about flowers, until he finally remembered and proudly said Rosa. She had found him to be a smooth talker, the kind who could make anyone smile without much effort. His looks drew attention wherever he went, and though he often appeared careless, he was surprisingly composed when it mattered. Many in their department were children of influential families, and being of similar rank had naturally kept them connected. Still, for Rosa, her closeness with Jaeon had more complicated reasons than mere status. In the present, as the night went on, someone suggested a second round of drinks, and others excitedly proposed heading to karaoke. A few agreed, but Jeon seemed distracted. He felt something brush against his leg. It was Rosa's leg, a quiet signal. Without saying anything, he leaned closer and murmured that they should meet again once classes started. The girl beside him looked surprised, reminding him that he had just said he had no plans. Jeon smiled and replied that something had just come up, slipping his fingers lightly along Rosa's sleeve under the table. Later that night, after leaving the party, Jeon caught up to Rosa outside, walking behind her with his usual teasing tone. He asked if her father had done something to upset her again, saying it wasn't healthy to relieve stress through doing that thing. Rosa turned to glare at him, asking why he had come along if he was just going to talk nonsense. Jan shrugged, replying that for him it wasn't stress, it was simply fun. They eventually arrived at a hotel. Once inside, Jan pulled her close and kissed her roughly. Rosa didn't resist. The two stumbled toward the sofa, their movements heated and desperate. As he went deeper, Jan asked why she couldn't focus, jokingly asking if she had fought with her new dad. Rosa's expression hardened instantly. She warned him to say that again and she would hit him. But Jan only smirked, whispering provocatively if she wanted him to show her how to make her family feel humiliated. His words grew sharper as he continued, saying she was to drag a stranger into the house without warning, then lock herself away like nothing had happened. He said he didn't even know what was going on inside that house, but somehow she made him curious, even though it was her home. Rosa tried to push him off, but he held her tighter. For a moment, she felt something heavy press inside her chest. It was as if she didn't belong anywhere, not even in her own home. She realized how hollow she had begun to feel. Her breathing grew uneven as she let out a faint cry, lost between anger and confusion. Yan leaned closer, asking if she wanted to move to another spot for another round. Rosa cursed at him, calling him insane. but Jaeon only laughed and continued, saying he'd bet her new stepdad would regret it one day, that he probably didn't even realize how beautiful his stepdaughter was. He told her to stop talking and just keep going. Rosa's expression froze. Against her will, an image of Yenwoo's face flashed in her mind, the same expressionless calm, the same quiet presence that irritated her endlessly. Her heart twisted at the thought. She muttered softly that if this was what Jaeon wanted, then it was fine. Later that night, the scene shifted quietly. Inside a private dining hall, Suryeon was seen sitting across from Yeonwoo. The atmosphere was calm, almost ceremonial. Suryeon smiled faintly, sliding a small box across the table. As Yeonwoo looked down, he saw a ring resting inside. As Yeonwoo wore it, Suryeon remarked that it was a surprise, a matching couple ring just like hers, and asked if he liked it. Yeonwoo looked at it for a moment, admitting that he didn't know much about such things, but even he could tell it was beautiful. He asked if he was really allowed to accept it. Suryeon affirmed that, of course, if she was giving it to him, he had to take it. She added with a small laugh that perhaps she had gotten the size wrong and asked if she should exchange it. Yeonwoo replied that it could be done later. For now, he would wear it on his index finger and thanked her. Apologetically, Suryeon mentioned that she had originally planned to exchange the rings in front of Rosa, but even after nearly a month of living together, Rosa still hadn't warmed up to him. She wondered when Rosa would finally accept that he was family now. She sighed, mentioning that Rosa had gone to a drinking party she rarely attended. She questioned why her daughter disliked him so much and how long she would have to keep worrying about the same thing. Yeonwoo smiled gently, asking her not to worry, promising to try harder since he genuinely wanted to become close to Rosa. The scene then shifted toward Rosa, where Gyeon was taking a shower. Rosa called out to him, asking if the bar they had drunk at last week wasn't owned by his father. Gyeon responded that it technically belonged to another person on paper, but his old man ran it secretly to entertain clients. Rosa approached, saying she would grant him one request, asking him to find out if Yeonwoo was really the same Yeonwoo living at their house, and if so, how he ended up working there, as well as how he met her mother. Meanwhile, the scene moved back to Suryeon, who told Yeonwoo that she wasn't worried about him, but rather about Rosa. The next day at home, Suryeon spoke with one of the workers, asking if it was really fine to move the plants outside. The gardener replied that it should be fine since spring had been warmer than usual this year. Yeonwoo asked about the organizing, but before she could answer, he leaned forward to kiss her. Suryeon explained that since spring had begun, she was moving the bonsai that had been kept indoors to the garden. Yeonwoo glanced at a pot nearby, noting how elegant it looked. He initially thought it was fake, but it was actually alive. Suryeon smiled and said it was a black pine she had planted with her own hands the year Rosa was born. Both were of the same age. Rosa added that if it ever showed even the slightest sign of decline, she would replace the caretaker immediately, and this was already the sixth one. The gardener bowed her head, promising to take good care of it. Yeonwoo placed his hand gently on Rosa's shoulder, commenting that Rosa was truly loved. Feeling his hand, Rosa's expression tightened as she muttered that lately, it felt like her mother cared more about that plant than about her. Suryeon remarked that at least the plant was gentler. It had never caused worry once in 22 years. Rosa chuckled softly, telling her mother not to worry, assuring her she was always studying her too. Rosa's phone suddenly rang, and she mentioned that the taxi had arrived and she would be heading out. Suryeon asked if classes were starting that day and suggested they go together since she also needed to head to work. Rosa agreed, and they left the house together. The gardener then excused herself, saying she should get going as well. Yeonwoo called after her, asking if she wanted help moving the pots. The gardener declined politely, saying it was her job to handle such tasks. Yeonwoo asked if she managed the whole garden by herself, to which she replied that she took care of the main building area, while the annex had its own separate staff due to its size. Yeonwoo nodded, offering to assist her with simple things whenever he was free, adding that he had plenty of spare time. The gardener seemed slightly flustered but accepted his offer. Rosa, watching all of this from a distance, muttered that he was doing it deliberately to get close to her. Later at the college, the teacher addressed the students, saying he knew they disliked group projects, but business studies and teamwork were inseparable. He added that not only in their future work, but also in life, they would often have to deal with people they didn't like. In that sense, he announced, the two sitting together now would be partners for the semester. Rosa turned to her side, realizing that Jian was sitting beside her. Later, while sitting on a bench, Rosa sighed, remarking that she hadn't heard the phrase, pair up with whoever you're sitting next to, since elementary school. She complained that she already felt exhausted and wanted to take a break. Jian smirked and said she should review the assignment since their professor would likely approve of whatever she submitted. After a brief pause, Yeon mentioned that regarding what she had asked him earlier, finding out about Yeonwoo, doing so wouldn't be difficult, but he questioned what they would do once they knew, pointing out that whether Yeonwoo had sold his breath or his body, Suryeon probably already knew before bringing him into the house. Rosa frowned, replying that there was no harm in learning more about someone she disliked. Jaeon leaned back, saying that if she truly hated Yeonwoo so much, she should just move out. He told her to inform her mother that she wanted her own place since the campus was too far. He added with a grin that he only saw his own brother's face twice a year and found it great. According to him, the best way to deal with someone one hated was to avoid them entirely. Rosa paused, her expression unreadable. Jaeon leaned in slightly, his tone low as he questioned if she truly didn't want that as well, if she didn't also want to stay away. Thinking about Suryeon, she mentioned that her mother was 48, and if she truly set her mind to it, getting pregnant wasn't impossible. Jaeon agreed, but Rosa asked if he wanted her to just leave those two alone when a crisis like her getting a younger sibling could happen. Jaeon paused, questioning if she wasn't getting a bit ahead of herself, saying he doubted her mother was planning on having another child. Rosa replied that maybe her mother wasn't, but what about Yeonwoo? What if he was thinking of getting deeply entangled with their family so he could settle in for good? She remarked that someone like him, a carefree, happy-go-lucky person with a broken relationship with his father, wouldn't understand. Jaeon commented that it sounded more like a string of curses. Rosa stated that he would never know what kind of reckless thing a person who was both deprived and unstable might do, which was why she needed to find out what kind of life Yeonwoo had lived. Jaeon asked why she couldn't just go and ask directly to her mother something like, if by any chance they are having another kid, which made Rosa stare at him in disbelief. Then he smirked and asked if she could check whether they were using condoms too. Later, Rosa entered her mother's room, thinking no one was home since her mother had gone to work and she didn't know where Yeonwoo was. Until the previous year, she sometimes used to sleep in her mother's bed. They used to fall asleep while chatting about trivial things that had happened that day. Now, she thought she couldn't do that anymore. Not on a bed that was soaked in a stranger's scent. The thought of her mother and that man doing such things frustrated her. She walked to the drawer and opened a box, thinking at least they were using protection. She admitted to herself that if she had jumped to conclusions just from seeing the couple's ring, she would have felt vaguely upset all this time. But now that she had confirmed it, she felt genuinely disgusted. The image of Yeonwoo taking out a condom, wearing it, and sleeping with her mother flashed in her mind. She imagined her mother moaning while Yeonwoo enjoyed it wholeheartedly, saying it felt good. Rosa screamed, throwing the box back into the drawer. She stood up, clutched her head, and kicked the bed, shaking with anger and frustration. The scene shifted to the garden, where the gardener thanked Yeonwoo for helping her for the past few days. Yeonwoo replied that he had told her he was doing it because it was fun, though he wondered aloud if the small fruit hanging on the tree was a tangerine. It seemed tiny, maybe because it was out of season. The gardener laughed softly, denying it and explaining that it was a kumquat, a completely different fruit. She offered him one, asking if he wanted to try it. Yeonwoo asked if he could pick it and eat it as he reached out and took one. The gardener mentioned that the owner's family usually didn't eat fruit from the garden. Yeonwoo took a bite and smiled, saying it was extremely sour, which made the gardener blush. Flustered, she accidentally pulled the water hose too hard, soaking him completely. Startled, she apologized, saying her hand slipped. She panicked, repeatedly apologizing and asking if he was all right. Yeonwoo laughed it off, saying it was cool and refreshing, and assured her he would simply change his clothes, telling her not to worry. The gardener's cheeks turned crimson with embarrassment. As she looked at him, she recalled a conversation she had with her colleagues earlier that week. One of the workers had mentioned a male guest staying in the house. The woman said he was around Lady Rose's age and asked the gardener to greet him if she saw him. The gardener had assumed he was a college student, wondering if he might be a relative of the chairman or an acquaintance of the young lady. The worker had told her not to be shocked and revealed that the man was the chairman's lover. The gardener had been dumbfounded. A young man the same age as the chairman's daughter? Another worker added that even Rosa was shocked, saying the situation felt straight out of a trashy drama. They wondered how the chairman could get involved with a man young enough to be her son. One of them mentioned having seen him, describing him as tall and handsome, saying he should have become a celebrity instead of being a plaything. Another remarked that he must be chasing an easy life, calling him a gigolo. Someone else chimed in bitterly, saying her own son was in the army shoveling snow for a small wage. Another added that the man was probably around her son's age and told her to keep an eye on him once he returned home, joking that good-looking men these days often went down the wrong path. The gardener had interrupted their gossip, asking why, of all people, the chairman would choose a man like that, which drew curious looks from the others. One of them answered that there could only be one reason for it. Now, standing in front of Yeonwoo, the gardener realized the truth in their words. She thought that anyone could tell just by looking at him. There was something effortlessly charming about him. His demeanor was calm, and his every movement exuded gentleness. His delicate eyes carried warmth that could make anyone's heart flutter without him even trying. It was as though his charm was something deeply ingrained, something that could drive one crazy without even intending to, in a good way or a bad way. Watching this, Rosa stood nearby as she felt her stomach twist. Disgust and anger churned inside her. After a few days, Rosa entered the kitchen. Seeing her, Yeonwoo called out, asking if she had eaten properly, and offering to take her plate and do the dishes himself, as he told the nanny she could leave for the day. Rosa placed the plate on the desk abruptly and walked out, leaving the nanny surprised that she had even taken her meal to her room. The nanny felt something was off since Rosa wasn't usually like that. Yeonwoo asked what Rosa was typically like, and the nanny hesitated, unsure how to put it. She finally described her as a calm and mature young lady who never got angry or raised her voice. Yeonwoo mentioned that she always seemed angry with him, which made the nanny flinch slightly. She explained that it was probably because the two of them weren't close yet. The young lady could be shy with new people, so she asked Yeonwoo not to take it personally. Yeonwoo nodded, saying he hadn't felt bad about it, but the thought had just crossed his mind. Later, Suryeon arrived at the house while talking on the phone. She mentioned that this time, the event would be held at her villa, similar to the last one, though she was planning to make it grander in scale. She added that Assemblyman Young had agreed to back her up. Handing her bag to Yeonwoo, she changed her clothes while continuing her conversation, calling out to President Seo and instructing him to take care of preparing the merchandise. She added that if he planned to attend, he should inform her in advance. Ending the call, she sighed, remarking that she felt tired and should take a bath. Yeonwoo curiously asked what the call had been about, to which Suryeon replied that she was planning to invite some guests over soon. Yeonwoo asked the reason, but Suryeon countered, asking why he was curious. Yeonwoo said it seemed she was going to be even busier, mentioning that he already felt lonely as it was. Suryeon teased him, asking if he was complaining. Yeonwoo smiled faintly and stepped closer to her, asking if he said he was. Would she comfort him? He kissed her, his hand slipping under her shirt as he unclasped her bra. His lips traced her skin, teasing her as his touch moved downward. Suryeon murmured that it felt good, urging him to continue as she looked at him with a half smile. Suddenly, she grabbed his neck tightly, her tone soft yet strange, saying he looked so pretty that day and asking why he was so pretty. Her words made Yeonwoo flinch slightly. Trembling, he asked if she really meant it. Suryeon's smile turned sharper as her hand struck at his rod, whispering that he was full of charm. Pain surged through him as he groaned. She tightened her grip around his arm while Yeonwoo struggled to breathe, his body tense from the stinging pain. He stepped back coughing, and she laughed faintly, calling him a baby before sitting down on the top step. She asked how his day had been, and Yeonwoo replied that he had merely existed. Suryeon mentioned that since she got home late, she must have eaten with Rosa, asking if it had been awkward. Yeonwoo explained that they hadn't eaten together. Rosa had chosen to eat alone outside instead. The scene shifted to a shop later. Rosa told her mother they could have gone shopping without her. Suryeon explained that there was an upcoming event she had to attend, so they could think of this as shopping for the occasion. She added that the dress looked nice. Rosa felt uneasy, finding it odd to be shopping alongside her mother and her mother's much younger boyfriend. One of the shopkeepers complimented Suryeon, saying her figure was incredible. This channel is demonetized, so if you want more parts, please support us by subscribing to our Patreon. The link is in the About section of our channel. And don't forget to subscribe to our other channel for more amazing content. And that the concept of their new clothing line focused on elegant silhouettes. They remarked that Suryeon would look like a princess in that outfit. Suryeon glanced at Yeonwoo, who smiled and agreed, saying she truly would look like a princess. Rosa clenched her jaw, resisting the urge to hit him. Just then, Suryeon received a call and cursed softly, saying something had come up at the office. She said she had to leave immediately. Rosa asked if she planned to finish shopping first, but Suryeon denied it, saying they had only bought her clothes so far. Since the store had been cleared out just for them, it would be rude to leave without buying anything else. She told them to finish shopping and return home after. Before leaving, she instructed Rosa to pick out something suitable for Yeonwoo as well. Rosa froze for a moment, surprised by the suggestion. Suryeon added that since Rosa knew her taste well, she could dress him up nicely and bring him to her. Rosa stared after her, unable to believe what she had just said. The thought of choosing clothes for her mother's boyfriend made her feel uncomfortable, yet she couldn't refuse. Rosa reflected on what her mother said about her taste. She knew her mother well enough to understand that it wasn't just her type. Though she claimed to know everything about her mother, she began to question how much her mother truly understood about her. As her memories drifted back, she recalled her mother giving her a toy, wrapping it neatly as a gift, a simple gesture that once brought her joy. Meanwhile, Yeonwoo stood nearby, adjusting his glasses while trying on a few outfits. Rosa watched him silently, her teeth brushing against her nails as one of the attendants noticed a tricky tie and offered to help. As the attendant carefully fixed it, Rosa's mind flashed to a dark recollection, the same type of tie that once strangled her teddy bear. The sight of Yeonwoo looking well-dressed only deepened her unease. The scene shifted to a pub, where a man found himself approached by a cheerful girl asking if he was new and whether he had just started. He smiled politely, saying he was looking forward to working with her. The girl teased him, commenting on his lively tone and calling him cute, quickly deciding to choose him for the day. Another man jokingly complained, asking if she was discarding him just because a younger face had appeared. At the reception, a woman sat before the monitor when Jian entered, calling out for Nuna. She turned surprised to see him and asked about the young gentleman accompanying him. She wondered aloud what brought him downstairs. She asked if it wasn't their youngest gentleman visiting them, asking what brought him there and offering to call some pretty girls for him. Jaeon quickly replied that his father would beat him if he stayed too long, insisting they only came for a drink and to say hello. The women giggled and asked Jaeon if he knew any handsome men who didn't have money, suggesting he bring them around. They mentioned they would pay those men a good hourly rate just to chat, not even to touch anyone. Yeon smirked, saying that among his friends, he was the best-looking one, though his flaw was that he actually had money. As the girl told him to watch his tone, finding his words amusing, Jian looked around, remarking that all the men working there seemed unbelievably handsome. He repeated his thought, questioning why every single man looked that good. The girl replied that the best-looking one among them had already cleared his debt and vanished. Jian raised an eyebrow, curious how someone in that business could ever pay off such debt. The girl explained that a VIP client had requested him exclusively for over 2 months, and the money must have come from there. She added that there was no way Yeonwoo could have earned that much in only 6 months, since VIP clients were managed by the director and no one knew who the woman he left with was. She cursed under her breath, saying if she ever saw that man again, he'd be dead. Jaeon felt a chill run through him. He thought about Rosa, feeling sorry for her, knowing that if she ever heard this story, she might faint. He wondered if he should look for the man too, and tried to picture what that person might look like. The focus shifted back to Yeonwoo, who smiled at the attendant after she finished assisting him. She froze for a moment, clearly flustered, then stammered an apology before offering to serve him tea while his order was being prepared, to which Yeonwoo thanked her kindly. He then called out to Rosa, reminding her that it was already 5 o'clock, asking if she wasn't heading out, and suggesting they grab something to eat before going in. When she didn't respond, he repeated himself, but she ordered him sharply not to talk to her. Yeonwoo replied gently, saying he only wanted to get closer to her, to share a meal together, and nothing more. But suddenly, Rosa called him Dad. That startled everyone around. The attendants glanced at each other, whispering if they had heard it wrong, wondering who she was calling him Dad. Realizing what she had said, Rosa snapped, asking if he intended to keep hovering around her. She demanded to know if he thought she would just pretend nothing had happened. She told him to stop already, admitting that she was struggling to hold herself back. Yeonwoo lowered his eyes briefly before lifting them again, telling her softly that she talked as if she didn't care, yet she kept giving him chances. His lips curved into a faint smile. Rosa looked back at him with cold, emotionless eyes. At that moment, the attendant returned with the packaged items, but Rosa didn't wait. She grabbed her bag and walked out in silence. Her thoughts spun as she recalled her encounters with Yeonwoo, the way he acted around the keeper, the gardener, and even her mother. She couldn't shake off the image of her toy that she cherished being torn and grabbed by everyone. Her memory drifted further, recalling when Yeonwoo had asked her about Suryeon's type. That moment had unsettled her deeply. She remembered how close he had been then, the warmth of his breath brushing her skin, and how something inside her stirred in confusion. It was then she realized something painful, that she and her mother shared the same taste in men. Just as that realization hit her, her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages. It was Jaeon. He had texted her several times, reminding her of her earlier words, how she once said she would grant his wish if he completed the task she gave him. Yeon sat in his room, telling Rosa about Yeonwoo that after cutting contact, even his manager claimed she had no idea what happened to him. He asked what she thought about it. To him, it seemed quite obvious from the start, but judging by the timing, it almost felt as if the man in question was her Yeonwoo. As he scrolled through his screen, browsing through a line of elegant dresses, he noticed the silence on the other end. He wondered why she wasn't responding. Jeon reminded her that he had told her everything he knew, and now he found himself strangely curious about the old man in question. He quickly corrected himself, realizing the man was only 2 years older, joking that maybe he should call him Big Brother instead. He remarked that he had never seen her pay this much attention to anyone before. But before he could say anything more, there was a loud noise on the other end. Confused, Xian frowned, calling out her name repeatedly and asking what happened. On the other side, the sound of a phone shattering against a mirror filled the room. Rosa stood there. A rush of memories flooded her mind, an image of a speeding car racing toward her, the deafening crash, and the sudden pain. She muttered that she had once been hit by a car. Jian recalled that accident from her high school days, asking why she was bringing it up again. Rosa murmured that this was exactly how she felt now, as if she had been hit all over again. She admitted that it was painful, but it had jolted her back to her senses. Afterwards, in the garden, where the gardener was busy collecting kumquats, she thought about how the trees made perfect decorations, their tiny fruits both bright and pretty. Yet since the chairman and the young lady never ate anything grown in the garden, she always had to clear away the fallen fruit before they spoiled. It seemed such a waste to throw them away when they looked so fresh and delicious. She sighed, reminding herself that none of it belonged to her, and decided to fetch a sack to clean up properly. As she walked through the garden, she wondered aloud why Yeonwoo hadn't shown up lately. He used to come almost every day to lend a hand and chat with her while she worked. She thought he might have gone out, though she rarely ever saw him leave the house without the chairman. She assumed he must be inside and continued toward the shack. When she stepped in, she froze. Yeonwoo was there, lying asleep on the couch. Her heart skipped for a moment as she whispered to herself, asking why he was sleeping there of all places. She still found it difficult to believe how strikingly handsome he looked up close. His facial lines were softer and more delicate than even most female celebrities. She stared at him, almost amused, and muttered that the chairman was foolish. It was as if he was keeping a beautiful doll locked away inside the mansion. She remarked what a waste it was to have a man like that hidden from the world. Still, she supposed there was a reason. Someone from a background like his probably belonged in this kind of setting. Having spent some time with him, she had learned he wasn't crude or promiscuous like others she had met. Even now, he looked serene, almost gentle. She tilted her head slightly, questioning why he would fall asleep so carelessly in the garden room, knowing that she was the only one who came there. All his innocence, his politeness, and the way he spoke kindly to her, it wasn't entirely her fault if she ever found herself wanting to reach out to him. She admitted to herself that this man understood exactly what women thought when they looked at him. She wondered what kind of life one would have to live to date a chaebol the same age as her own mother, especially when he was only 24. Yet she couldn't deny how breathtaking he was. She questioned quietly if she would ever again meet someone as good-looking as him in her entire life. Her hand hesitated before reaching forward. As her fingertips brushed along his cheek, she felt the warmth of his skin against her palm. Suddenly, Yunwoo stirred. Without warning, he caught her fingers between his lips, biting them softly. The gardener froze, gasping as his tongue pressed lightly against her skin. For a moment, she didn't pull away. Her pulse raced, and she instinctively slipped her fingers into his mouth again, trembling at the sensation. Then, abruptly, a loud noise echoed from outside. The gardener jumped, pulling her hand away in shock. Her heart pounded as she realized what she had just done. She stepped back, horrified at herself, whispering under her breath, questioning what she had been thinking. She turned toward the door, stepping out into the open corridor, only to see Rosa standing there. Rosa's eyes were cold, her expression unreadable. She asked in a flat tone if the gardener was working hard today. The gardener stammered, forcing a nervous smile as she greeted her politely. Before she could say more, Rosa took a step forward, trying to walk past her, but the gardener instinctively blocked her path. Flustered, Rosa raised an eyebrow and asked what she was doing. The gardener quickly replied that if Rosa needed something, she could fetch it herself, explaining that it was dusty and messy inside, so it might be dangerous for her to go in. Rosa's glare darkened as she bent down to pick up a shovel from the ground, holding it up and pointing it toward the gardener. She remarked that she had found it lying there and wondered if it belonged to the place. The gardener hurriedly reached for it, apologizing, saying she had only set it down for a moment and didn't mean to leave it there. She added that she was sorry if it had bothered her. Rosa's tone grew sharper as she replied that it indeed bothered her. She said she hated seeing things lying around carelessly, rolling on the ground as if they belonged nowhere. The gardener lowered her head, admitting she would be more careful next time, and started to leave. But just as she turned, Rosa's voice stopped her cold. Rosa asked if it was fun, taking a secret bite when no one was watching. The words cut through the air like a blade, and the gardener froze, her breath catching in her throat. As the gardener nervously asked what was wrong, Rosa showed her the fruit she had picked, explaining that she never intended to eat it but thought the taste might be different if eaten in secret. The gardener, trembling slightly, apologized, saying the fruits were just there abandoned. She added that a few taken wouldn't matter since those were only for display anyway. Rosa stared at her with a cold, intimidating look before quietly saying she had a point and could leave now. After the gardener hurried away, Rosa entered the small storage area and found Yunwoo sleeping soundly. She looked down at him and muttered that her mother's lover was nothing more than a gigolo for display. Holding his hand, she mockingly called him Oppa, whispering how he had become such a pathetic mess. The scene then shifted to the past. Rosa sat in a car with lifeless eyes. Suryan had complained that it was taking too long and their daughter might get carsick. One of the guards leaned toward the front and respectfully informed the chairman that they were almost at the estate. Suryan assured Rosa that they would arrive shortly and told Rosa she could wait patiently while her mother handled business. Rosa quietly agreed, earning Suryan's praise for being such a good girl. Her gaze drifted outside the car window where a little boy played alone near the gates. Back in the present, Rosa was jolted awake by Yeon's voice. They were in the college hall. Jeon called her name, waving his phone and complaining that it had died. He asked what she had been thinking so deeply about and why she hadn't been checking her DMs. Then he urged her to choose one outfit since she would be the one wearing it. He explained that he had just finished an intense solo tournament the day before, and this was his final choice for her. Rosa tossed a book his way, as to make Jeon shout that she had promised to grant him a wish. Rosa looked unimpressed and asked when she had ever said she would get him something so embarrassing. Their bickering drew the teacher's attention, who shouted for them to quiet down, saying class was over and they should stop causing a commotion. He added that if they had so much free time to fight, they could follow him instead. He needed some help organizing supplies for the seminar tomorrow. Later, inside the storage room, Jeon groaned as he looked around, questioning why there was so much stuff. He remarked that the teacher told them that it would only take 10 minutes. He mumbled that if Rosa hadn't tried to look for something unnecessary, they would have been done sooner. Rosa immediately denied it, but Jeon insisted he was the one doing all the work, picking, buying, and even dressing her up. She interrupted sharply, telling him to stop being such a pain in her ears. Out of nowhere, Rosa commented that the kind of wish she meant was something like getting tickets to an exclusive event. Jeon smirked and teased that what he really wanted was for her to invite him using her body. Rosa groaned, cursing that his line was killing her, and told him to go fetch some water so she could wash her ears out. Pouting, Jeon suddenly pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her and pressing his lips in her ears. Rosa flinched, asking what he was doing. Jian grinned and said he was washing her ears, then teasingly licked her ear, making her squirm. She gasped, cursing again as he lightly bit her ear, his breath hot against her skin. He murmured that her voice was beautiful when she cried, that just hearing it made him lose control. Rosa tried to stop him, reminding him this was still school and they shouldn't do something so risky. But Jian held up a small key, saying the professor had given it to them so they could lock up when they finished. Jian realized he had already thought it through. In moments like these, he knew there was a simple way that made her give in, his confidence and timing. Jian whispered that they had never done it in a place like this before and asked if she didn't think it sounded exciting. He said that doing things one wasn't supposed to do made it more fun anyway. A moment later, Rosa found herself on the table, caught up in his pace. Jian thought to himself that for a girl who had everything in life, the only thing she seemed to lack was fun. He praised her softly, saying her skin felt smooth and warm under his touch, and he loved how firm her body was when he held her close. He could feel her muscles tremble more clearly than with anyone else. Rosa, blushing and frustrated, told him to just do it already and stop talking so much. Jian chuckled and told her to say something back, to tell him if there was anything about him that turned her on. Rosa hesitated, silently admitting there were things about his body that attracted her, but she didn't want to say it aloud. When she didn't answer, Jian teased her again, saying he had stripped in front of her so many times already. Trying to hide her embarrassment, Rosa finally muttered that his rod was huge, but Jian scoffed, asking if that was the only thing she noticed about men. Rosa rolled her eyes and said anyone could tell he worked out. Wasn't that obvious enough? What else did you want her to say? Jian laughed, still holding her close, and told her to give him her hand. When she did, he placed it on his back, telling her to appreciate her partner's body and show some respect for his effort. He leaned down and kissed her deeply, his words melting into her breath. For a moment, everything blurred. The tension in the room grew thicker, their movements slow yet deliberate. But as Rosa closed her eyes, another image flashed in her mind, Yeonwoo's face, the one she had slapped earlier. Her breath hitched, and a strange discomfort rippled through her chest. Yeon called her name, his voice rough, unaware of her inner thoughts. He cried out softly as she clutched at him, her cheeks flushed red. As Jian questioned what Rosa was doing and if she planned to hit him, she climbed on top of him, asking if she could just slap his cheek once so as to petrify him. Jian, startled and uneasy, asked if something was bothering her and suggested they talk it out. However, Rosa denied having any problem and said she only wanted to try hitting him once. Jian was taken aback, thinking it was unusual for her. She had never been the type to talk about trying things while doing it. She had always been like that since their first night together. That night, Yeon had asked her if it was really okay, while Rosa had silently wondered if this was what imprinting felt like. It was awkward for Yeon to sleep with someone he had known since middle school, yet he told himself they could get to know each other gradually. Jian had hesitated, about to ask if they should start dating, but Rosa interrupted, saying it had been more fun than she expected, and if the timing worked out, they should do it again. Jian had been left surprised by her casual tone. Even so, their relationship somehow continued for 2 years. Still, when it came to Rosa, he often struggled to describe her. She always treated intimacy as something lighthearted, almost as if it was simply fun and nothing deeper. Jian thought she lacked curiosity. He, on the other hand, had many things he wanted to try. He had even thought about suggesting playful ideas like tying up or other kinds of roleplay, but he knew that if he brought them up, her hand would probably fly across his face instantly. Ironically, that reaction was on his bucket list too, and he had just been waiting for the right moment. But now, unexpectedly, she was the one asking to slap his cheek. Jian questioned if, since he had been the one insisting on doing it at school, she should also be allowed to do whatever she wanted. Still, he couldn't understand why Rosa was suddenly acting this way. What kind of change of heart had she gone through? Without another word, Rosa suddenly slapped Jian hard across the face. The sharp sound filled the room, and her breathing grew heavier. Jian's cheek turned bright red as he froze for a moment. Just then, a few classmates approached the door, knocking and asking why it was closed since they needed to take out the speaker. While Rosa asked Jian if his rod was stuck out there, telling him to take it out. While outside, someone questioned if the door was stuck, while another suggested trying to pull it open. A voice mentioned the key wasn't there and was probably in the supply room on the 3rd floor, so they decided to go look for it. Meanwhile, inside, Jian couldn't help but enjoy the moment with Rosa. He held her close, his hands running across her chest as he teased her until she whimpered his name. Later, as he checked his reflection on the camera, he told her softly to take it easy, warning that she might scratch him. Rosa reminded him that he was the one who told her she could hit him. Jian chuckled, admitting he had indeed wanted to try something like that at least once. Then, Rosa paused, recalling Yeonwoo's face after being slapped earlier. She quietly said that, for her, the feeling wasn't as satisfying as she had imagined. She said it didn't feel right, and from now on, they shouldn't try anything like this again. Jian blinked in disbelief, unable to accept it so easily. Deep down, though, he wanted to try it again, saying he liked it when she was honest like this. When Jian suggested she should cut her nails, Rosa replied that long nails looked pretty and asked if he couldn't just endure it for her. Jian laughed lightly, saying she didn't need to act so cheerful all of a sudden. Later that evening, Rosa returned home feeling exhausted. Her body ached, and she only wanted to rest. But as she entered, she heard the sound of the television playing in the living room. She sighed softly and looked over to find Yeonwoo sitting comfortably on the couch watching a movie. The way he sat there made her think he treated the place as his own home, lounging around like a king in her living room. When she walked closer, she noticed something surprising. Yeonwoo's eyes were red, and tears were rolling down his cheeks. He was crying while watching the movie. Rosa couldn't believe what she was seeing. Someone crying over such a predictable and cliché romance story. She stood silently for a moment before Yeonwoo noticed her presence. Startled, he quickly wiped his face and asked when she had come in and whether she had just returned from school. Rosa crossed her arms and asked why he was crying. Yeonwoo grew flustered, insisting that he didn't really know. He said he had just been watching and somehow ended up crying without realizing it. His voice trembled slightly as he tried to laugh it off. Then, trying to change the topic, he asked if she had eaten yet and offered to make something for her. For a brief moment, there was silence between them. Yeonwoo gave her a small nod and said he would head to his room then, and she could call him if she needed anything. He began to walk past her, but Rosa suddenly stopped him. Her voice was low as she said she hadn't eaten yet. Yeonwoo froze mid-step, clearly caught off guard by her words. Afterwards, when Yeonwoo served Rosa some rice, he mentioned in a humble tone that he was not sure if she would like it, though he had tried his best. Sitting in her chair, Rosa looked at him with a hint of curiosity and asked if he had made the food himself. Yeonwoo confirmed quietly that he had indeed prepared it. Rosa tasted it, feeling surprised that it was genuinely good, and then glanced at Yeonwoo again. As she noticed that he was simply staring at her without saying anything, she calmly questioned why he was looking at her in such a way. Yeonwoo, in a somewhat nervous manner, asked if she knew about the long-tailed tit. Since Rosa did not react, Yeonwoo let the topic go with a small smile, saying never mind. He then told her that if there was anything else she wanted to eat, she only had to tell him, and he would happily make it again. Rosa tapped open her phone and searched online for the long-tailed tit. A cute, round little bird appeared on the screen, leaving her puzzled. Yeonwoo began speaking softly. He admitted that he had been sincerely happy when she started speaking to him again, because he had believed that she intended to ignore him completely. He reflected on the day they went shopping together, remembering how he had unintentionally upset her. He said that he had wanted to apologize properly, but the chance never arose. He stated quietly that he could explain now what he had meant back then, but Rosa interrupted him with a firm tone. She questioned why he had gone so far in his efforts. She reminded him that nothing he did would change her feelings, since she had already made it clear that she did not need a stepfather in her life. Yeonwoo paused and responded with a quiet but heartfelt voice, saying that while she might not need him, he needed her. He needed a family. His words left a long silence between them. Rosa, unable to ignore the seriousness of his tone, asked what he meant about needing a family and what had happened to his real one. Yeonwoo calmly revealed that he never had one. He shared that he had grown up in an orphanage, and that although he had almost been adopted several times, none of those chances worked out. When he was 12, a wealthy family finally took him in. They had cared about him in their own way, and he had been grateful. However, their business collapsed under heavy debt, and she could likely guess the outcome. They passed away, leaving him alone, crying at their funeral with nowhere to go. He continued by admitting that he knew he did not fit perfectly into the household compared to her mother. He acknowledged that he was young, inexperienced, and still had much to learn. However, he promised that he would do his best to make up for everything he lacked and find his place in their home. He then gently brought up Rosa's mother, asking Rosa to give him just a chance. Rosa's eyes turned cold, showing no willingness to open her heart. Suddenly, Suryeon walked in, surprised to find Yeonwoo and Rosa together. Yeonwoo greeted her warmly, saying that she was finally back and asking why she had taken so long. Suryeon explained that she had attended a friend's funeral and then looked at the table, surprised to see the two of them eating together. She asked if Yeonwoo had cooked the meal and whether Rosa had actually requested it. Yeonwoo smiled and said that Rosa had merely mentioned being hungry. Suryeon gently patted Rosa on the shoulder, remarking that she was fortunate to have a stepfather who could cook so well. She teased that if they continued like this, the two of them might eventually start getting along. Suryeon and Yeonwoo then went upstairs together, leaving Rosa behind in the quiet dining room. Rosa's thoughts turned dark. She imagined a chilling scene of pushing Yeonwoo down a flight of stairs. She remembered his words about needing a family and thought to herself that it was unfortunate, because she still hated everything, just like before. The scene shifted to the Flora residence, once a traditional family home that had been rebuilt by her mother after her grandmother passed away. Since there were usually only two people living there, they only used one side of the house. However, for events such as the upcoming one, they used the large annex near the back garden. A servant came in and addressed Rosa respectfully, informing her that the chairwoman would be moving to the annex at 4. Rosa responded calmly, acknowledging it. She stood in a luxurious dress, saying that she would head over soon because there was nothing more she needed to do in her room. Meanwhile, Yeonwoo stood in another room holding a necklace. Suryeon noted that the event she had mentioned earlier was taking place that night. She said she would return before midnight. Yeonwoo carefully placed the necklace around her neck, and Suryeon noticed how unusually quiet he seemed. She asked what was wrong, and Yeonwoo replied that it was nothing. He just regretted that they would not be able to spend the evening together again. Suryeon sighed and said that she wished they could attend the event together, but it was not the right setting to introduce him to everyone. She mentioned that appearing with him would only upset Rosa more, since she was still far from comfortable with him. Yeonwoo admitted that he was doing his best, even though it was difficult. Suryeon looked at him closely and said that perhaps she should finally make something very clear. She gently stroked his face and suggested that maybe his appearance made things harder than necessary. She smiled softly and said that he looked a bit too young the way he was now. She then proposed that they try styling his hair differently, perhaps tying it up, so that he seemed more mature and people would see him in a different light. At the party, Rosa quietly sensed that it was early April, the kind of evening when the air carried the smell of fresh grass and flowers in full bloom. She felt that the weather could not have been more perfect for an event meant to celebrate something large and meaningful. Looking over the mansion from her position, she thought that everyone who truly mattered was present. The Flora board members had arrived, as had senior politicians, her mother's longtime business partners, prominent lawyers, well-known celebrities, and even foreign dignitary called out to her with a friendly tone, remarking that Rosa had grown into a fine young lady. Rosa greeted him respectfully and calmly, saying it was good to see him again, addressing him as Leon. Leon spoke with a grin, saying that Brandon had not stopped talking about the cute Korean girl he had met in Miami, asking if she remembered him. Rosa answered that of course she did, mentioning that the two cousins were built quite similarly and that she realized that later on. She asked how Brandon was doing, for which Leon said that he was doing well, currently studying in Pennsylvania. Leon added that it was a pity he could not bring Brandon to such a special event. Rosa smiled politely and encouraged him to enjoy the evening to the fullest. Rosa thought to herself that Yeonwoo was probably locked up at home again. She felt it was better that way. The party was being held in the annex and Yeonwoo already carried a certain awkward presence. There was no need for him to get involved in something of this scale. Suryeon suddenly appeared beside her, admiring Rosa with a proud tone, saying that she looked like a natural, greeting guests with confidence and grace. Suryeon joked that she could have placed her at her side already, treating her like a proper partner in the business. Rosa replied that she had not even graduated yet. Suryeon said that she had joined the company at 24 and taken over the chairmanship at 34. Rosa insisted that her mother was a special case, while an official chimed in, saying the chairman's ascent had been legendary, and her reputation had hardly faded since then. Rosa quietly sensed that it had been a long time since she had spoken so comfortably with her mother. Ever since a certain day, she had felt as though something in her life had been stained. Yet without Yeonwoo around, things at least felt familiar, like the household she once knew. She believed that after he left and her mother eventually lost interest, things would naturally settle back into place. However, as she glanced across, she froze in disbelief. Yeonwoo was standing among the guests, greeting people with a smile. Rosa questioned in her mind how on earth he had gotten inside. The annex was locked down, and no one would have been admitted without her mother's explicit invitation. A guest noticed Yeonwoo as well and remarked that the young man was hard to miss. He said he had spoken to him briefly. According to what Yeonwoo told him, he was a scholarship recipient of the Flora Foundation. If he had received an invitation, then the one who supported him must have possessed considerable influence. The guest asked Suryeon if she knew anything, addressing her respectfully as Madame Lee. Suryeon answered that she did not personally know about it. The guest then commented humorously that of course, someone like him would be out of her league anyway. Suryeon excused herself, saying that she should go and make a final inspection of the auction items and would return shortly. The guest responded that he was eager to see how competitive things became this year, then bid her farewell. As Yeonwoo glanced at Rosa, he approached her slowly. He greeted her with a gentle voice, but her expression remained absolutely cold. Seeing her hostility, he tried to lighten the moment by smiling and saying that she looked like a princess. He then admitted that she must have been surprised to see him at the party. He assured her not to worry. He had promised her mother that the two of them would pretend not to know one another, and they would simply look around quietly. He said this was his first time attending a formal event of this scale, and it felt like an entirely different world. Even the drinks tasted luxurious. He mentioned that he had heard something special would be served for the second half of the event and asked if she knew what it would be. Rosa responded in a low voice, saying alcohol. She explained that people called it a social drink, but technically, it was a drug more addictive than many of the mild substances teenagers bragged about at parties. Yeonwoo seemed curious and asked more. Rosa replied darkly that the substances she referred to were far worse. One attempt was enough to ruin someone forever, frying the brain permanently. She thought that she had once believed she could bring her mother back, but her mother was not in her right mind anymore. Dragging Yeonwoo into a place like this and letting someone she viewed as insignificant set foot where he never belonged. Yeonwoo was stunned by her harsh statement. Rosa told him to listen carefully. This was his last chance to walk away unscathed. She dared him to leave now or remain and be entangled in her family until it destroyed him. Yeonwoo's eyes widened, and he could not understand why she held such strong hatred toward him. He wondered aloud if perhaps she had begun opening up a little, and maybe that was why. But Rosa cut him off coldly. She said that if he wished to stay, fine, he could have it his way. She then turned and walked away, biting her lip as she left. Later, in the main hall, Suryeon stepped onto the stage and addressed the attendees. She thanked all the patrons who supported the auction and said it was her honor to ensure that such treasured items eventually found their rightful owners. Though she remarked with humor that her speech had grown stale from repetition, she announced the start of the second part of the evening. She said that anyone who preferred serious discussions could join her upstairs in the lounge. For everyone else, special dishes and drinks had been prepared, and she encouraged everyone to enjoy themselves freely. As Rosa prepared to move, Yeonwoo glanced briefly at her. Suddenly, a lady approached him and asked if he was Yeonwoo. She mentioned that the weather was getting chilly outside, and they were all heading in to continue drinking. She invited him to join them. Yeonwoo turned and looked at Rosa for an instant, then smiled and said that he would be glad to. He followed the group inside, leaving Rosa observing him from a distance, while she sighed at him. During the ongoing celebration, as the guests continued exchanging lively conversations and the soothing music blended into the evening, Yeonwoo's glass of wine was about to fall, as one of the girls had leaned upon his face to kiss him. Kisses carried a romantic reputation, though more often they were not as poetic as people imagined them to be. Yeonwoo sat beside the girl, listening as she spoke about the liquor she had been praising earlier. He asked quietly whether this was truly the special kind she had mentioned before. He examined the drink curiously, admitting that he did not understand what made it worthy of such admiration. The girl smiled in a playful manner and leaned closer, letting her leg brush gently against his own. She instructed him to try holding the liquor beneath his tongue before swallowing, saying that the flavor and sensation would spread more richly that way and bring out the taste in full. Yeonwoo followed her direction, although uncertainty still remained in his expression. He looked at her with mild confusion, asking whether she had more of the drink. The girl giggled lightly. While there were people who, even after receiving hundreds of kisses in their lives, had not experienced a single true moment of romance. She moved even closer as to give him a kiss, assuming the mood had progressed smoothly. However, Yeonwoo suddenly leaned away from her touch. The girl stared at him in surprise and asked why he reacted in such a manner. She laughed it off, saying that she had just introduced him to a perfect spot to drink and enjoy the evening. She appeared relaxed and carefree, amused by the awkward shift in the atmosphere. Yeonwoo fell silent as Rosa's voice from the past echoed in his thoughts. He remembered something Rosa had once told him, words that now blended with the present moment. He muttered that to him. There was no space here where he belonged. His expression changed slightly, and the girl sensed something was wrong. She asked what he meant, confused by his sudden words. Instead of explaining, Yeonwoo ignored the question and stood up. He turned toward the exit and began walking away without offering any further explanation. The girl blinked rapidly, startled by his sudden movement, and immediately stood up as well. She called after him, asking where he was going and urging him to sit down again. She set her glass aside, still shocked by his sudden shift in behavior. She complained loudly, saying that if she had startled him, he could have just told her instead of walking away. She demanded to know why he had stopped drinking when he had not even finished the glass she had handed to him. Yeonwoo still did not respond and continued walking. The girl became more frustrated, shouting at him to stop. She yelled that he was acting like a little brat who could not handle himself. One of her friends nearby remarked that she could simply leave and head towards some elite host bar if she wanted. She muttered that men at his level were not rare. However, the girl retorted that those men appeared rehearsed and artificial, while Yeonwoo's reaction seemed natural and unfiltered, making him more intriguing in comparison. As Yeonwoo continued down the hallway, he began feeling dizzy. His heartbeat quickened, and he could barely maintain balance. Sweat poured down his face, his breathing became uneven, and his skin felt strangely cold despite the heat rushing through his body. He wondered if this overwhelming sensation was truly the result of the special liquor she had given him. He reached the exterior of the mansion, and nearby, Young-mi happened to be passing by. She recognized him immediately and called his name, surprised to see him in such a state. She hurried over, reaching a hand toward his cheek. She noted that his skin felt freezing, even though sweat covered him. Yeonwoo startled slightly at her touch and stepped back, insisting that it was probably nothing and asking her not to follow him. He said that he only needed some fresh air, wanting distance to gather himself. However, as he walked forward, his legs weakened unexpectedly. His knees bent and he knelt down, realizing that something was undeniably wrong. He questioned internally whether the liquor had truly caused this reaction, or if something else had happened. Young-mi knelt beside him, concerned and unsure of what to do. She admitted that the drink could become strong if consumed excessively, but claimed she had never seen anyone react this severely before. Yeonwoo tried to steady himself, gripping the ground to maintain balance. Young-mi hesitated for a moment before attempting to help. She said gently that she would pat his back to help him regain composure and moved closer. She placed her hand on him, intending to support him, but in the process, her hand slipped and brushed against his private area. Her eyes widened, her cheeks flushed red, and she froze in mortified shock. Her fingers lingered unintentionally, and Yanwu jolted away with a sharp gasp. He asked in disbelief what she thought she was doing. Young-mi, still overwhelmed, stammered that she had only been trying to help because she thought he was collapsing. She insisted that her hand had slipped there by accident and that she had no inappropriate intention. She urged him not to misunderstand her actions, saying she was only trying to steady him. Yanwu stared at her, overwhelmed and trying to process her excuse. He spoke with a trembling voice, telling her not to touch him like that and asking her to stop following him. The girl's face hardened with offense, and she fired back emotionally. She asked how he could speak as though she was behaving indecently. She stated forcefully that she was only trying to assist him, despite the rumors spread about him. She pointed out that he had crawled through host bars before, and yet he was treating her like a creep. Yeonwoo froze, shocked by her bold accusation. He asked her what she was talking about. Young-mi bit her lip in regret, explaining that she had heard rumors from others. She said that people in the mansion whispered that he had sold his body. She asked him not to be angry and said she was not judging him. She claimed she was on his side because people born into situations like theirs rarely had choices. They often followed wherever life pushed them. She continued, saying that his relationship with the chairwoman was also something bound by money. She said she did not think there was love there, only duty and circumstance. Yeonwoo stared at her in disbelief, asking what she was even saying. His head was still spinning, both physically and emotionally. Young-mi looked at him with heavy sincerity. She told him that she liked him and believed he already knew. She wrapped her arms around him, saying that she had fallen for him the first time she had seen him and did not think she would ever meet another man as handsome as him again. She pressed her face against his shoulder, holding him tightly. Yeonwoo remained frozen, unsure how to react. She spoke once more, saying that since he had once done such intimate work before, he could do it with her just this once. She asked what the issue was if they simply spent a night together. Before he could say anything, footsteps approached rapidly from ahead. Yeonwoo looked up, eyes widening slightly. Standing a short distance away was Rosa. She stared at them with a furious expression, her eyes dead with silent accusation. As Rosa stood there, her gaze moved between Young-mi and Young-mi clinging tightly to Yeonwoo. Yeonwoo attempted to call out to Rosa while Young-mi, clearly frightened, stared at her. Fear gripped Young-mi's heart. She wondered why Rosa was there at that moment, and whether she had heard everything. If Rosa told her mother about this incident, serious trouble would follow. Panic settled in as Young-mi tried to explain herself, attempting to speak before Rosa could react. However, Rosa's eyes remained completely blank, fixed directly on the two of them without any visible emotion. Young-mi struggled to come up with an excuse, her mind racing, but Rosa slowly approached Yeonwoo instead. Her gaze lowered to Yeonwoo's face as she closed the distance. Before Young-mi could finish her explanation, Rosa suddenly raised her hand and delivered a sharp slap to Yeonwoo's face. The sound echoed clearly, leaving both Yeonwoo and Young-mi stunned. Rosa muttered that he was irritating every single time. She expressed disbelief that he would dare lay his hands on one of the household staff, causing Yeonwoo to flinch instinctively. Rosa then shifted her attention toward Young-mi, calmly asking whether Yeonwoo was not a troublesome man. Young-mi's body trembled as she heard the question. Rosa continued, asking whether she had misunderstood the situation, stating that Yeonwoo was clearly the problem. Her expression twisted into something unsettling as she sought confirmation as she demanded an answer. Afterward, Young-mi was dismissed and moved away, her thoughts spiraling. She wondered what Rosa was truly thinking. Rosa had clearly seen and heard everything, so why was she letting it go so easily? Young-mi could not understand it. She questioned whether Rosa was genuinely trying to push Yeonwoo out this time. Everyone in the household knew that the young miss disliked the man who stayed so close to her mother. Perhaps what she witnessed had finally made her resolve firm. Yet the expression on Rosa's face when she slapped him lingered in Young-mi's mind, unsettling and intense. Eventually, Young-mi brushed it aside, telling herself that it worked out in her favor regardless. She decided to finish her remaining tasks and head home quickly. Still, a strange thought crossed her mind. If Yeonwoo was truly driven away, she would no longer see him again. She quickly corrected herself, thinking that if he was kicked out and left alone, perhaps she would finally have her chance. That fleeting thought startled her. Just then, something caught her attention. The spray bottle slipped from her hand when she spotted Rosa outside. Rosa was visibly shivering, staring down at her own hand. A familiar sensation returned to her, one she remembered all too well. She shifted her gaze toward Yeonwoo, who was kneeling on the ground, trembling violently and struggling to breathe. Rosa rushed forward and grabbed his face, noticing how flushed and red it was. She muttered whether he had been drinking alcohol, specifically red wine served in a glass rather than from a bottle. Yeonwoo weakly tried to touch her hand, saying that he felt dizzy. Rosa immediately questioned which woman had done this to him this time. She pushed him away and told him to get lost, stating that someone like him did not belong there. She turned away, saying that she would call someone to handle the situation and told him to go find help. However, Yeonwoo grabbed onto her, desperately denying her assumptions. He recalled Youngmi's earlier words, realizing that the voices had been loud and that everyone in the house knew where he came from. Yeonwoo muttered weakly that it was not someone else. He only wanted to return to his room. He asked whether she could take him there. Rosa, watching him shiver uncontrollably, repeated that she would call someone. She reminded him that she had just slapped him and openly stated that she did not like him. Yeonwoo denied her words, insisting that she did not truly feel that way. Rosa glared at him, questioning his claim. Yeonwoo pleaded again, asking her to take him back. As Rosa looked at his face, memories surfaced. She recalled about an encounter where she had seen a small boy kneeling in the same manner, reaching out to grab a football. She remembered glaring at him before kicking the ball away, and the boy had glanced back at her with wide eyes. In the present, as Yeonwoo had grabbed onto her sweater while passing. Even now, Yeonwoo muttered weakly about how she had managed to hit the same spot twice, remarking that despite her small body, her hands were sharp. His words only irritated her further, yet Yeonwoo continued to cling to her sweater as she walked, dragging him along until they reached the mansion. Rosa found herself supporting him as they walked, questioning internally why she was even doing this. Yeonwoo groaned softly, his weight leaning heavily against her. Rosa snapped at him, telling him to pull himself together. She questioned why he was collapsing when they were almost there. She muttered that this situation resembled stepchild abuse and insisted that they only needed to make it up the stairs. Suddenly, Rosa stumbled over Yeonwoo's foot, and both of them fell to the ground. Rosa groaned as pain shot through her nose. She glared at Yeonwoo and ordered him to move immediately. Yeonwoo's weight pressed down on her, making it difficult for her to move. She demanded to know why he would not move. She attempted to call out for help, shouting for someone to come. Midway through calling out, realization struck her. Everyone had already gone home. She remembered agreeing with her mother to sleep in the annex that night. No one would come to this area until morning. The silence around them felt heavy and absolute. Slowly, she turned her head to look at Yeonwoo. Yeonwoo was staring back at her, his face still flushed red, his breathing uneven. His gaze lingered on her as he continued to look at her without speaking. In that quiet moment, Rosa too stared back at him. As Yeonwoo continued to stare at Rosa's face, she looked back at him and felt she had always thought he was skinny, yet up close his body appeared far bigger than she expected. His frame seemed solid, almost overwhelming, and the closeness made her feel strangely unsteady, as if her senses were slipping out of balance without warning. As she noticed Yeonwoo huffing, his head tilted back toward the ceiling while he breathed heavily, Rosa felt the air around them grow burning hot. Yeonwoo muttered it was too hot as his hands moved to his shirt, starting to pull it off in irritation. When the shirt lifted, revealing his toned body and defined abs, Rosa could not help staring, even as she tried to stop him. She questioned whether he had lost his mind and asked what he thought he was doing. Yeonwoo replied irritably, complaining about why the shirt would not come off properly, and then it suddenly snapped free. At the same moment, Lee Suryeon's necklace also snapped, falling to the floor with a soft clink. She reached out toward it, grounding herself by focusing on the familiar weight of the necklace, questioning what had just happened. Pulling herself together, she asked her assistant how the party was going, and the assistant replied everything was running smoothly. She asked about the drug list next, and the assistant denied any problems there either. When Lee Suryeon questioned whether her daughter was still present, the assistant explained she had been chatting with the riding club in the lobby around 10 o'clock and asked whether he should check on her now. Lee Suryeon refused, thinking her daughter would complain about being treated like a child again. She stared into empty space, feeling unsettled and convinced she was missing something important. As the scene shifted back to Yeonwoo, Yeonwoo bent forward again, attempting to steady himself while removing the rest of his shirt, but dizziness washed over him. Without warning, his back gave out and he fell onto Rosa, pinning her beneath his weight. She questioned sharply what he was doing, annoyance clear in her voice, while Yeonwoo struggled to open his eyes and let out faint groans. Rosa tried to tell him to pull himself together and get a grip, but Yeonwoo barely seemed to register her words. Instead, he clutched his rod and groaned about the pain, rubbing distractedly as if searching for relief. Rosa could only stare, frozen in place, watching his confused movements. Yeonwoo continued groaning as his hands kept moving, and Rosa's gaze shifted from him to the photograph of her mother nearby. She wondered, with a mix of disgust and frustration, what kind of chaos she had brought into their house. Yeonwoo kept murmuring about the pain, clearly disoriented, while Rosa continued to watch him, hearing him wonder aloud why nothing seemed to be working. Her hand slowly lifted toward his face, almost without conscious thought. Her fingers brushed his skin and then slid down toward his chest, resting there hesitantly. Rosa muttered she had never seen him look so tormented or helpless before. She pinched at his chest and huffed again, his breathing uneven. Watching him like this, Rosa thought she honestly preferred this raw, unguarded version of him more than his usual confident smile. Even so, unease lingered as she wondered how he would face her the next day after this mess, and whether he even understood who he was with at this moment. Yeonwoo kept huffing, his vision blurred, as he murmured it had been a long time since he last saw her mistaking her as Lee Suryeon. He added, half-dazed, that she must have been very busy, mentioning the manager had said she stopped coming around because he refused to go for another round. Still clearly disoriented, Yeonwoo admitted he was not accustomed to this kind of situation at all. His thoughts drifted backward, recalling moments of cruelty he had endured and the many hardships he had survived. memories rising uninvited and heavy. He said if she wanted, he could still do it, his voice low and uncertain. In the next instant, Rosa found herself being kissed by Yeonwoo as he pressed his lips against hers. The kiss deepened without warning, his tongue slipping into her mouth while she tapped nonchalantly against the floor, her mind struggling to catch up. She stared blankly, unsure how to respond, as Yeonwoo continued to press closer, trying to assert himself despite his unsteady state. He whispered he could go down on her instead, his words breathless and impulsive as he slithered through her melons. Faced with his expression and the intensity in his eyes, Rosa could only stare at his face. Rosa stared at him while letting out a tired sigh, then reached out and grabbed him by his hair, saying seriously that she could not stand listening to him act like such a pitiful bastard. She slammed him down so he would stay grounded. As Yeonwoo felt blood coming from his nose, his body shivered slightly. Rosa pressed further, saying that he was so drugged up that he could not even put strength into his body, yet he still had enough energy to act like a bastard. She kept calling him trash, repeating it again and again. But while struggling, Yeonwoo cried out when the pain became too much. Rosa saw his reaction and pushed down on his waist to keep him in place. It hurt enough to make him plead for her to stop. He cried out and asked why she was doing this to him. Rosa paused for a moment, her expression shifting as she felt something inside. She said that he only recognized who she was once she hit him. She said she was doing this because she felt sorry for him, calling him Appa. She said that watching him whimper like a dog in heat was strangely beautiful to her. She moved upon him and said she would help him as to make Yeonwoo confused. Rosa then asked who else was supposed to help him, if not her. She asked whether he wanted her to call Jeonmi for him or take him back to the woman who made him drink that alcohol, or maybe send him to his mother, who had pushed him into that kind of party without any warning and did not even care where he was now. She said there was no one for him, no one at all. She reminded him that the person who warned him earlier, who got Jeonmi away from him and brought him there, was her. Other than her, she said, no one would go that far for him. Yeonwoo stared at her blankly while she stared back at him. His eyes slowly filled with tears as he said she had told him she did not like him. Rosa replied that it was because she thought she actually wanted to have fun with him, but she could not, so it felt like hatred instead. Rosa asked whether that was enough while staring at him, thinking bitterly about how meaningless the idea of family felt. She thought she would ruin that dream in the way that hurt him the most. She thought no matter how hard he struggled to escape, it would only tighten around his neck. She unbuttoned his belt and wrapped it loosely around his neck, saying it was just like the background of his life. On the sofa, Yeonwoo said it was hard to breathe and asked her to loosen it. Rosa replied that he could not even keep his balance, so what nonsense was he talking about? She forced him to finish and asked who had said he was allowed to stop while pushing him again. She said she found it interesting that he claimed he was good with his mouth, and at least he was not lying about that. Suddenly, she groaned as Yeonwoo stood up in a dazed state, breathing heavily and questioning what he was even doing and why Rosa was there. He thought he could not believe he was doing this with her. His head started to hurt and felt hotter than before. He could not think clearly anymore and only felt the urge to follow whatever his heart wanted as he leaned over her. Rosa tried to calm him, telling him it was okay and asking him to look at her. Yeonwoo grabbed her hand, making her flinch. He bit her fingers and asked why she was so cute, saying she looked like a princess today. Rosa flinched again, sensing something was wrong, and asked why he was suddenly acting like this. She groaned again, thinking he was pushing too much and feeling something was not right. She told him to wait. She screamed at him to wait and said it looked like she had made a mistake as she gripped his belt. She thought that with a bastard like him, one could not give even a little room to crawl upward. Rosa tightened her grip on the belt to make Yeonwoo choke. He coughed harshly while trying to struggle, but Rosa pushed him down, biting her lip as she wondered what was happening. He looked as if he was about to stop breathing, and yet he was not pushing her away. Even if the drugs explained part of it, she felt there was something else involved. Suddenly, Yeonwoo started to shake more violently as he choked. His hands slipped down weakly, and he lost consciousness. Rosa felt confused as she tried to wake him, asking whether he was sleeping or had passed out. She called his name loudly and told him to wake up while wondering what she was supposed to do. Suddenly, Yeonwoo jolted awake on the sofa, breathing heavily, and noticed he was completely dressed. He wondered whether it had all been a dream. After some time, he went to Rosa's room and knocked on the door, calling her and saying it was him, asking whether she was inside. Rosa came out and asked what he wanted at such an hour. Yeonwoo tried to ask whether, by any chance, something had happened, but he stopped midway as he reconsidered everything. Rosa asked whether he had called her because he had something to say. Yeonwoo thought he had many things he wanted to say, yet not a single thing he could actually express, especially when recalling the unclear memories from before. He asked whether she was going to kick him out. Rosa replied that she was saying that he must have looked too pathetic the night before. She mentioned that if he had behaved properly, no matter how drunk he was, A woman like her would not have led him on. Yongwoo then thought about the woman and remembered that the last clear thing before losing awareness was Rosa slapping him. He tried to deny that anything like that had happened, saying nothing happened at all. Rosa then asked about him and whether, before she kicked him out, he had any intention of leaving on his own. She said it was the last chance she was giving him. She felt startled when he started shivering and asked why he should listen to her. Rosa replied calmly and stepped closer to him, wrapping her hands around him and placing a necklace around his neck. She said they should try to get along from now on and called him Stepfather as she closed the door. Later in the bathroom, Yongwoo bathed while feeling something heavy inside. He stood under the water, thinking about himself and quietly crying. The next day, Suryeon asked Yongwoo what time he had come the night before. She said he was not there when she fell asleep. Yongwoo replied that she had been sleeping, so he did not want to wake her. Suryeon said it was good of him, adding she had been tired as well. They moved to the living room. Suryeon noticed that several servants were standing around, scattered in an odd way, as if something had disturbed them. They looked frightened and uneasy as they saw the chairwoman coming. From the upper floor, Rosa stood still and watched them quietly. Suryeon's bonsai appeared completely withered, with its leaves already fallen to the floor. Jongmi knelt before Suryeon in visible shock, sweat forming along her temples as she tried to understand what she was seeing. Yongwoo glanced at Suryeon's face, noticing how it was filled with fury and restrained anger. The silence felt heavy, and Jongmi felt as though every breath she took made the moment worse. After a while, Jongmi moved away from the room, walking unsteadily down the hallway. As she stepped outside, she encountered Rosa coming out of another room. Jongmi stopped her immediately, confronting her while crying and questioning whether this had something to do with her. Rosa looked confused by the sudden accusation. Jongmi asked if it was because of what happened the previous night. Rosa responded by denying it as she pointed out that Jongmi had been fired because her mother's bonsai had died, and she questioned why Jongmi was bringing her into it. Jongmi raised her voice, stating that she had taken proper care of the bonsai and that there had been no problems until the previous week. She questioned whether Rosa had done something to it in the meantime. Rosa responded by asking whether Jongmi had not found the red potted plant right after the two of them parted ways the day before. Rosa questioned when she had ever done anything wrong. Jongmi tried to reply, but Rosa continued, stating that the same thing had happened with the kumquat tree as well, and she reminded Jongmi that it belonged to her. Rosa stepped forward, stating that Jongmi should not think she could touch something like that and simply get away with it. Jongmi felt confused by the situation and wondered if they were even talking about a bonsai so seriously. As she recalled the events of the past week, she suddenly remembered seeing Yeonwoo sleeping in the shack and meeting Rosa there. A thought crossed her mind, and she felt herself shivering as she wondered if Rosa had been planning all of this from the beginning. Jongmi questioned why Rosa would do this to her when she claimed to hate Yeonwoo so much. Rosa denied her statement, replying that she does hate him truly. But she remembered how she had suddenly seemed to realize something the day before, and how her attitude had shifted. The scene shifted back to Yeonwoo, who called out to Suryeon and questioned whether she was alright. Suryeon responded by signaling him to leave, and Yeonwoo followed the instruction without arguing. Suryeon felt deeply unsettled, thinking that she had raised the bonsai for years and questioning how it could die so easily. Outside, Rosa met Yeonwoo and thought that she had finally figured it out. Rosa thought that she had hated Yeonwoo, felt uncomfortable around him, and felt irritated because she had been trying to treat him like a person. She thought of him as an outrageously expensive toy her mother had bought out of pity, someone who simply existed with a pleasant face and no real place. She reasoned that if he was nothing more than an existence like that, then there was no reason to push him out of the house. Rosa ignored Yeonwoo completely as she walked away, thinking that at least she would not be the only one missing out on whatever fun remained. The scene shifted to the college campus. Rosa walked along the pathway when Jaeon approached her from behind and grabbed her arm lightly. He commented that the weather was nice and asked whether the party over the weekend had been fun. Rosa questioned whether there had been anything fun about it. Jaeon replied vaguely, mentioning this and that, and Rosa remarked that he should have come along. Jaeon responded by explaining that his father had warned him that if he was caught doing drugs again, he would be sent to some remote countryside in Europe where people did not even speak English. Rosa commented that he probably needed that kind of discipline, which made Jaeon groan. He then asked whether she was free that evening. Rosa questioned what he meant. Jaeon looked at her with some intent, and Rosa suggested that they could go to his place, eat dinner, enjoy themselves, and work on the business strategy assignment since the deadline was approaching. Jaeon agreed and commented on how pleasant she was. Rosa then noticed something and stopped walking. Jaeon asked what was wrong, but she did not answer immediately. Later at the house, the servant informed Rosa that the tablet was on the dressing table. Rosa instructed her to take it to the school right away, and the servant agreed to the order. as Yeonwoo was moving in the kitchen at that moment. Suddenly, he heard a scream and called out to the servant, asking whether she was all right. The servant groaned about her leg and questioned what had happened. Yeonwoo helped her stand and asked if she was okay and whether he should call 119. The servant denied that it was serious and instead worried about the tablet, stating that she still had to deliver it to the young miss. Yeonwoo looked at the tablet and noticed that there was something on the screen. He commented that its screen is not broken and it still looked usable as he asked whether he should go instead. He then questioned where he needed to go. Afterward, the clouds gathered over the campus and rain began to fall. As Rosa stood in the rain, she reached upward toward Yeonwoo, grabbing him tightly toward her and pressing her lips against his as if to kiss him. A few hours earlier at the college, Rosa felt irritated as the lecture continued. Writing by hand felt painfully slow, especially while the professor kept talking without pause. She glanced sideways, asking whether Jihyun could later help by sharing notes, but the sight of him completely asleep made her dismiss the thought. She quietly let it go and continued writing on her own. After the lecture ended, the students began leaving the classroom. As they walked out together, Jihyun casually asked whether she was free and suggested getting lunch. Rosa responded by asking what they should eat. Jihyun suggested Chinese food, mentioning the Great Wall restaurant located near the back gate. Before Rosa could reply, her phone suddenly rang. The number was unfamiliar. She answered cautiously and greeted the caller. The person on the other end informed her that he had arrived and asked where she was. Rosa questioned his identity, confused by the familiarity in his voice. The caller then stated that he could already see her and called out her name from a distance. Hearing this, Rosa turned around with a sense of dread. Behind her, she noticed Yeonwoo walking toward her. While inwardly cursing the situation, she questioned why he was wandering around outside the campus. As Yeonwoo approached, he questioned what she meant and asked whether she had saved his number. He casually remarked that he guessed this was their first call of the day. Jaeon and his friends stood frozen, visibly shocked and bewildered by Yeonwoo's striking appearance. The girl nearby questioned Rosa, asking whether Yeonwoo was someone she knew. Yeonwoo greeted her politely and introduced himself as Kim Yeonwoo, while Rosa glared at him sharply, clearly displeased. To her surprise and irritation, he introduced himself as her acquaintance and added that Rosa had asked him to bring her something. Jihyun questioned whether he was that Kim Yeonwoo, to which Yeonwoo responded by asking whether Jihyun knew him. Jihyun felt uneasy as he stared at Yeonwoo more closely. He wondered whether this was Chairman Lee's man, the same person who had caused Rosa to react so violently before. He questioned whether this calm and well-dressed man was really the one responsible. As he continued staring, Jaehyun glanced toward Rosa, which made her question why he was looking at her like that. Jaehyun quickly denied his own thoughts, brushing them off as stupid. He reasoned that unless Rosa was completely insane, there was no way she would be interested in her mother's man. Feeling hungry and uncomfortable, he announced that he was starving and suggested they leave immediately. His friend agreed, and the two of them walked away. Rosa glanced at Yeonwoo, but Yeonwoo continued staring at Jaehyun. She then stated that he had come to give her the tablet and asked him to hand it over. As Yeonwoo reached for it, Rosa snatched it from his hands and questioned why he had come in the first place. She also remarked that he was wearing something completely unsuitable for him. Yeonwoo then informed her that Madame O had fallen down the stairs. He added that he was glad he had come anyway. He looked around curiously and remarked that this must be what a university looked like. He asked whether she could show him around the campus just once. Rosa questioned why she would do that but found herself walking with him regardless. She reasoned that she needed to eat lunch anyway, and he claimed that he did not know the way out. Later, as rain began to fall, Yeonwoo held out an umbrella and asked Rosa to come under it, stating that he would hold it for her. As they descended the stairs together, he commented that the flowers would likely fall because of the rain. Rosa continued staring at him, unsure of what to say. As they reached the exit, Yeonwoo called out to her and stated that there was something he wanted to say. Rosa flinched slightly at his tone. He explained that nothing had happened that day and stated that he had been too drunk to remember things clearly. He added that if he had made a mistake, he would apologize and asked whether she could forget about it, reasoning that they still had to live as a family. Rosa realized that this was the real reason he had come. She recalled the incident clearly and stated that his words were unexpected. She remarked that she was surprised someone like him even understood shame. She added that she never expected a man who sold his body to possess such feelings. Yeonwoo felt taken aback, a murky sensation settling inside him. He shivered slightly and stated that he did not know what she would think if he said this, but he still felt compelled to speak. Yeonwoo admitted that it was true he did the kind of work she mentioned. However, he stated that he had never gone all the way with a client before. He explained that Sir Yeon had been his first in every sense, his body, his heart, and everything else. As he handed the umbrella to her, he stated that he had thought she might open her heart to him, even a little, but realized that he had been mistaken. He stepped back under the rain and stated that he would leave, apologizing for bothering her. Rosa continued staring at his back as he walked away. She sighed, then suddenly threw the umbrella aside and reached out to him. She questioned what kind of answer he had been hoping for by saying all of that. She then thanked him sarcastically for saving his dignity while working at a host bar, only to have it taken by her mother. She stated that he remembered her and knew who she was, yet still dared to contact her. She questioned how he could live his life so shamelessly and called him a bastard. Rosa suddenly stepped forward and reached for his lips, lunging toward him. Yuanwu gasped for breath as she grabbed him and pressed her mouth against his. She continued, licking his lips and going in for a French one. As Yuanwu tried to push her and step back, he questioned why she was doing this. Yuanwu demanded to know what she was doing. At that moment, Rosa collapsed slightly before bursting into laughter. She continued laughing while Yuanwu stared at her in complete disbelief. Rosa mocked the idea of family and confronted him, stating that he should not even dream about it. She remarked that she should have done this sooner, as this was the most certain way to make things clear. Hearing her words, Yuanwu broke down and burst into tears as he stared at Rosa. This channel is demonetized, so if you want more parts, please support us by subscribing to our Patreon. The link is in the About section of our channel. And don't forget to subscribe to our other channel for more amazing content. The scene shifted toward the past, returning to the days of Hanarun Orphanage. Heavy rain poured from the sky, drenching the grounds without pause. On the radio inside the building, the news continued broadcasting warnings about the worsening weather. The forecast spoke of unbearable heat, followed by endless rainfall, day after day, as if the seasons themselves had lost their balance. Outside, the downpour showed no mercy, turning the surroundings into a blur of gray and rushing water. A woman moved carefully along the street, holding an umbrella above her head as she tried to shield herself from the rain. Her steps slowed abruptly when a faint sound reached her ears. At first, she thought the rain was playing tricks on her, but then she heard it again, a soft, desperate cry. Shock washed over her as she noticed a small bucket placed near the gate. Beneath an umbrella carefully positioned above it, a baby lay crying helplessly. The child looked no more than a few months old, wrapped poorly and trembling from the cold. The sight froze her in place, her breath catching as she realized someone had abandoned an infant in such weather. Time passed, and the baby grew up within the walls of the orphanage. Yuanwu spent his childhood there, surrounded by other children who often admired him. He stood out in ways he never quite understood, earning quiet attention wherever he went. Yet despite brief moments of warmth, misfortune followed him closely. Even after being taken in by foster parents, fate showed no kindness. They passed away as well, leaving him alone once more, burdened with grief and responsibility far too heavy for his age. As the years moved forward, debts began piling up relentlessly. With no protection and no one to rely on, Yuanwu became an easy target. His employers treated him cruelly, subjecting him to constant harassment and violence. Beatings became routine, carried out without hesitation or guilt. On one such occasion, as he lay bruised and helpless, a woman arrived at the scene. She ordered the goons to stop, specifically instructing them not to strike his face. Her voice carried authority, but there was no kindness behind it. She stepped closer, wearing a sharp smile as she addressed the men around her. Her gaze shifted toward Yuanwu as she remarked coldly that unless he was beaten regularly, he never listened. Calling out to Yuanwu, she blamed him directly, stating his behavior had angered Madame Hong greatly. She questioned whether he truly believed those madams failed to notice him making excuses and avoiding them. She mocked him for hanging onto his so-called pride, claiming he insisted on doing things his own way, with his own hands, as if effort alone could replace obedience. She sneered as she mentioned the drugs, warning they would not work properly unless he cooperated. She reminded him that if elderly women failed to excite him, he should consider using medicine just to function at work. Her voice grew harsher as she complained about repeating the same warnings again and again. She made it clear that next time there would be no backing out. He would be expected to go all the way without hesitation. The woman continued, informing him that Madame Hong found the thing on his back disgusting and wanted something drawn over it. When Yuanwu questioned what she meant and why such a thing should be done, her response came swiftly. She slapped him hard, mocking him as she asked whether he thought he was singing a Japanese song. She ridiculed him further, remarking that he still believed he had the right to refuse. She then asked whether he wanted her to draw it herself, offering him the illusion of choice. At that moment, a memory flooded his mind without warning. He recalled a younger time, when a little girl had kicked his football across the ground. He remembered groaning in frustration as he scolded her, asking what she thought she was doing and why she was kicking someone else's ball. He recalled questioning whether she was the child who had arrived earlier in a black car, his words sharp and unkind. He had confronted her boldly, asking why she was standing there, calling her a brat simply for hitting the football. Before he could react further, a security guard rushed over, demanding to know what was happening. The guard grabbed Yuan firmly, questioning what his problem was and who he thought he was yelling at. Though shaken, Yuanfu tried to explain that the child had kicked his ball, but the guard dismissed him immediately. He stated that a ball existed to be kicked and played with, not guarded possessively. The guard continued harshly, pointing out that Yuanwu was merely a child from the orphanage. He questioned whether Yuanwu even knew which family the young lady belonged to, raising his voice as he accused him of risking everyone's jobs. The words cut deeply. Yuanwu felt his chest tighten as tears welled up uncontrollably. He denied any ill intention, his voice breaking as he struggled to speak. Throughout it all, Rosa continued staring at his face, her gaze steady and unreadable, silently witnessing his humiliation. She walked away slowly, then paused and turned back, bending down to pick up the football. Holding it out toward Yuanwu, she told him to take it, mentioning she had seen him playing with it earlier. Her tone remained casual, almost teasing. She added that he had been smiling so prettily while playing. A curious thought crossed her mind as she wondered what he might look like while crying. With that, she gave him the ball and apologized, the sudden action catching him off guard. Yuan-Wu stood there in silence, unsure how to respond. Yuan-Wu, equally confused, asked why she wanted to see him cry. Instead of answering directly, she tilted her head and asked for his name. After a brief pause, he introduced himself simply as Yuan-Wu. The moment lingered awkwardly between them, filled with unspoken curiosity and confusion. The scene returned to the present. Ji-Hyun-Woo walked beneath the cherry blossom trees, utterly alone, with no soul in sight. Rain continued pouring relentlessly from the sky. His blue jacket clung to his body, drenched and heavy with cold water. The fierce rain showed no sign of stopping, soaking him through as he sat there motionless, exhaustion weighing heavily on his body and mind. Meanwhile, the scene shifted toward Ji-Hyun. He entered his apartment while repeatedly calling out Rosa's name. His phone remained useless in his hand, the call refusing to connect no matter how many times he tried. Confusion settled in as he wondered why Rosa was not answering at all. It seemed unusual, especially since she appeared to have skipped her next class as well. Moonso crept in as he moved further inside. As he entered the bathroom, he jumped in shock. A startled cry escaped his throat when he saw Rosa sitting quietly in the bathtub. He questioned what she was doing there, his voice tense with surprise. Rosa responded calmly, explaining she was only there to wash up. His confusion deepened as he demanded to know why she was in his bathtub. In response, Rosa stated plainly that he had told her to come. Ji-Hyun knelt beside the tub, his expression softening as concern replaced his shock. He asked whether something had happened. Rosa remained silent, mumbling faintly, her words unclear as she hinted she had been planning to do it starting now. Ji-Hyun tried to question her further, but before he could finish his sentence, Rosa suddenly grabbed him and kissed him. Though he believed using intimacy merely to relieve stress was not a good thing, her beauty overwhelmed his hesitation, leaving him unable to resist. What followed was a long moment where the world outside faded away, and the room became filled with shared cries and you know what. The scene then shifted back to Yuan-Wu, who continued standing beneath the rainy sky, his expression distant and dazed. The sound of rain filled his ears until a familiar voice echoed out, calling to him. He lifted his gaze and realized it was Suryeon. She questioned why he was standing there in such a state, asking whether something had happened. Yuan-Wu smiled faintly and replied that she seemed to be off work. He commented on the rain and casually asked whether something had occurred on her way back. Suryeon denied anything happening and instead questioned why he looked the way he did. Without waiting for an answer, she ordered a guard to place an umbrella over Yuan-Wu and bring him inside. The guard immediately complied. As Yuan-Wu followed behind Suryeon, a sudden flashback crossed his mind. The image of Rosa standing drenched in the rain surfaced briefly, sharp and vivid, before fading away. He remained quiet, keeping his thoughts to himself. Elsewhere, Rosa continued spending time with Ja-Hun, the cries and warmth around her doing little to ease the weight pressing on her chest. Ja-Hun glanced at her face, questioning whether she was truly okay. Rosa found herself unable to answer honestly. She denied anything being wrong, yet deep inside, a heavy feeling settled in, making her believe she was already done for. This channel is demonetized, so if you want more parts, please support us by subscribing to our Patreon. The link is in the About section of our channel. And don't forget to subscribe to our other channel for more amazing content. At night, inside the quiet mansion, Yuan-Wu stood while slowly unbuttoning his shirt. His fingers hesitated midway, and a faint flinch passed through him as Suryeon spoke calmly to her daughter over the phone, confirming Rosa's plan to stay over at a friend's place and return the next day. Her tone remained composed, though curiosity lingered beneath it. She asked about Jaeon, wondering whether Rosa truly had a friend like him. Rosa confirmed it without much hesitation, her response steady yet restrained. While the call continued, Ji-Hyun appeared distracted, lost in his own thoughts. He was delighted because he had found a familiar piece of clothing in the house, recognizing the panties she had left behind earlier. He remarked lightly on finding them. Surya reminded Rosa to handle matters properly. However, she grew uneasy at the sudden shift in her daughter's attitude. She questioned why permission seemed necessary all of a sudden, and wondered when she had ever tried to control her personal choices. Rosa explained calmly that she only felt her mother should be informed, considering she would not be coming home for the night. Suryeon questioned the reason, yet the call ended before anything further could be explained. Moments later, Ji-Hyun sprang up from the sofa, announcing excitedly that the delivery had arrived, his sudden energy cutting through the lingering tension. Ji-Hyun examined the food bowls. He wondered whether Rosa had ordered them for dinner. Noting that everything consisted of vegetables, Rosa replied evenly, explaining her upcoming magazine shoot scheduled for the following week. Ji-Hyun reacted with visible surprise, commenting on how her marketing team must have influenced such decisions. He admitted that she never seemed like someone who listened easily, yet she turned out to be a professional model. His perception of her shifted slightly in that moment. Jeon then brought up the topic of the company, questioning whether she intended to inherit it someday. Rosa responded calmly, stating she was the only child. She added that the relatives had already stepped away from the front line long ago. Jeon clarified that he had not meant it in a possessive sense. He continued honestly, noting that her mother had driven everyone out when she took office, leaving no one else capable of handling the responsibilities. After saying so, Rosa fell silent, her thoughts weighing heavily on her. Ji-hyun reflected on her words and wondered what it must feel like to be loved so intensely by a mother. Rosa repeated his phrasing quietly, acknowledging her mother's love. She then questioned what such love truly meant. Back at the mansion, Suryeon poured a glass of wine and handed it to Yeonwoo, encouraging him to drink. Yeonwoo accepted politely and took a small sip, trying to remain composed. Suryeon mentioned casually that Rosa would be staying out for the night. She added that Rosa was not usually the type to stay away from home, and wondered what might have caused the change. Her curiosity deepened as she questioned whether something upsetting had occurred at school. Yeonwoo flinched subtly at the implication. Suryeon then revealed she had heard about Yeonwoo visiting Rosa's university earlier that day, possibly because of something. The knowledge caught him off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. Suryeon reflected aloud that it felt like only yesterday when they were trying to become a family. She observed that instead of growing closer, the distance between them seemed to be increasing. She wondered what Yeonwoo thought about it all. Yuan felt his body tremble as he apologized quietly, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. Siwar-hin told him not to apologize and leaned closer, explaining that she did not wish to see him so discouraged. She remarked that his efforts still seemed insufficient, her tone firm yet unsettling. Her presence stirred something unfamiliar within him, sending a strange sensation through his body. His face flushed uncontrollably as confusion and unease mixed together. Yeonwoo noticed his hands shaking as his vision blurred at the edges. Suryeon assured him calmly that she would help him develop the will to improve on his own, and advised him not to worry. She mentioned casually that she enjoyed correcting imperfect children, her words carrying an unsettling undertone. In that moment, the glass slipped from Yeonwoo's trembling fingers and shattered against the floor. He struggled to breathe properly as panic tightened his chest, leaving him disoriented. Suryeon observed him closely and asked whether the taste of the wine felt familiar. She wondered if he had experienced it before at the party or whether it had been given to him by team leader Kwon from the Daeyoung firm. As Yeonwoo struggled to speak, he asked whether she already knew, admitting in fragments that something had been done to him and that the effects tormented him almost immediately. His thoughts felt scattered and unfocused, his body reacting before his mind could fully grasp what was happening. Suryeon reassured him calmly, indicating he did not need to explain anything further. A faint smirk appeared on her face as she considered his reaction, already certain of the circumstances. She wondered whether he truly believed she would not understand what would happen if someone like him went to a place like that. She had sent him there with full awareness of the outcome, having anticipated every consequence in advance. She reflected on how easily someone in his position could be influenced, likening his behavior to that of a neglected puppy acting out when deprived for too long. At the same time, she acknowledged her own limitations, recognizing she was growing older and could no longer indulge every situation herself. For that reason, she had allowed him to seek release elsewhere, believing it would be sufficient. Yet seeing him now, still restless and unsatisfied, only reinforced her impression of him. She concluded quietly that his nature remained unusually pure. The thought lingered as Yeonwoo knelt dazed, his mind struggling to process her words. Suryeon bent down slightly, calling his attention back to her and urging him to regain control of himself. She reminded him gently that their desires aligned more than he realized. A faint smile followed as she spoke of her vision of a perfect family, her expression calm yet deliberate. Ji-hyun-woo remained frozen, caught between confusion and an unsettling sense of understanding. The following day outside the mansion, Ji-hyun and Rosa arrived together in a car. As the engine stopped, Ji-hyun prompted Rosa to step out, casually wondering whether the chairwoman was already inside or had left for work. Rosa quickly answered his question, noting it was broad daylight and she was surely already gone, especially given how busy she had been lately. Ji-hyun mentioned wanting to greet her, considering how long it had been since they last spoke. Rosa exited the car and headed toward the mansion entrance. Just as she moved away, Ji-hyun called out to her again, mentioning he had something for her. Before she could react properly, he slipped an item discreetly into her pocket. The suddenness of the gesture startled her, and she questioned his sanity. Ji-hyun dismissed her reaction, clarifying through his actions that he was not suggesting she carry such things around without reason. He reminded her of the previous night, recalling how she had handed them to him while unclothed, only for them to run out. When they had ordered more online, the delivery had simply been left at the front door. He reflected on how the moment had lost its intensity while struggling to open the packaging, a frustration that still annoyed him. He insisted it was his size and cautioned her not to use it with someone else, adding that such things could slip off if mismatched. With that, Ji-hyun stepped away, leaving Rosa behind. As she watched him go, Rosa dismissed him internally as shallow, yet undeniably useful. His carefree and cheerful personality provided her with a sense of relief. When she was with him, her thoughts quieted, and she no longer felt pressured to analyze everything. She recognized her need for someone like that, someone who allowed her mind to rest. As she moved inside the mansion, she reflected on the comfort of having someone who kept her thoughts from pressing in too heavily. Suddenly, faint groans reached her ears from another room. Her pace quickened as she followed the sound, only to find Yeonwoo lying there, trembling and struggling to catch his breath. His condition alarmed her instantly. Yuan Wu found himself drowning in an empty place, lying there unconscious, but a sharp voice echoed in the space, urging him to wake up. Rosa felt panic rise as she questioned what had happened to him and why he appeared hurt. She urged him to regain consciousness. Her thoughts jolted abruptly as her eyes fell on his body. The marks on his neck and skin caught her attention, and a sudden realization struck her. In that moment, she felt it no longer mattered what kind of man he was. The sight alone told her more than words could. A disturbing thought followed as she wondered whether he had taken pills again and been involved with her mother. The idea unsettled her deeply, especially knowing he could not even remember what had happened with her before. She questioned how someone like him could be pushed so far. A bitter realization formed as she considered that a man like this might only come to his senses after being completely broken. She reflected grimly that if the person responsible for pushing her into this depth of humiliation had been anyone other, she would not have cared who it was. The weight of that truth pressed heavily on her chest as she stood there, torn between anger,